Welcome back, guys, to Regaining the Balance. We're going to be doing part 3 of Journey of Souls. Um, let's see here, we'll just get right into it, making sure the sound is good. We're all good to go here. Okay. And let's share the screen so you guys can see the text. All right, I think we're ready to go. All right, so Chapter 9, The Beginner Soul. There are two types of beginner souls: souls who are truly young in terms of exposure to an existence out of the spirit world, and souls who have been reincarnated on Earth for a long period of relative time, but still remain immature. I find beginner souls of both types in levels 1 and 2. I believe almost three-quarters of all souls who inhabit human bodies on Earth today are still in the early stages of development. I know this is a grossly discouraging statement because it means most of our human population is operating at the lower end of their training. On the other hand, when I consider a world population beset by so much negative cross cultural misunderstanding and violence, I am not inclined to change my opinion about the high percentage of lower level souls on Earth. However, I do think each century brings improvements of awareness in all humans. It's an interesting statement, actually. I have to say I would agree with that. World beset by so much negative cross-cultural misunderstanding. I mean, wow, you couldn't have expressed what's going on today even better. And remember, this book was written like I think 40 years ago. So, over a number of years, I have maintained a statistical count of client soul levels in my case files. Undoubtedly, the figures are weighted to some extent at the lower levels because these subjects were not selected at random. My cases could be overrepresented by souls at the lower levels of development because they are the very people who require assistance in life and might come to me seeking information. For those who are curious, the percentages by soul level of all my cases are as follows: level 1, 42%; level 3 or level 2, 31%; level 3, 17%; level 4, 9%; and level 5, 1%. Projecting these figures into a world population of 5 billion souls would be unreliable using my small sample. Nevertheless, I see the possibility we may have only a few 100,000 people on Earth at level 5. My subjects state that souls end their incarnations on Earth when they reach full maturity. Uh, my subjects state that souls end their reincarnations on Earth when they reach their full maturity. What is significant about the high percentages of souls in the early stages of development is our rapidly multiplying population and the urgency babies have for available souls. We are increasing by 260,000 children per day. And again, this is 40 years ago. This human necessity for souls means they must normally be drawn from a spiritual pool of less advanced entities who require more incarnations to progress and are, therefore, more available to return to another life. I am sensitive to the feelings of clients whom I know to be in the early stages of development. I cannot count the number of times a new client has come to my office and said, quote, "I know I'm an old soul, but I seem to have problems coping with life," unquote. We all want to be advanced souls because most people hate to be considered a beginner in anything. That's true, and I think people, if anyone listening to this, put this all in perspective. Okay. um, every case is unique. There are many variables within each soul's character, individual development rate, and the qualities of the judges assigned to them. I see my task as offering interpretations of what subjects report to me about the progression of their souls. I've had many cases where a client has been incarnating for up to 30,000 years on Earth and is still in the lower levels of 1 and 2. The reverse is also true with a few people, although rapid acceleration in spiritual development is uncommon. As with any educational model, students find certain lessons more difficult than others. One of my clients has not been able to conquer envy for 850 years in numerous lives, but she did not have too much trouble overcoming bigotry by the end of this same time period. Another has spent nearly 1,700 years off and on seeking some sort of authoritative power over others. However, he has gained compassion. The next case represents an absolute beginner soul. This novice shows no evidence of having a spiritual group assigned as yet because she has lived too few past lives. In her first life, she was killed in 1260 AD in northern Syria by a Mongol invasion. Her name was Shabez, and her settlement was sacked, resulting in a terrible massacre of the inhabitants when she was 5 years old. Case number 20. Dr. N. Shabez, now that you have died and returned to the spirit world, tell me what you feel. Subject shouts, "Cheated! That life was so cruel. I couldn't stay. I was only a little girl, unable to help anybody. What a mistake." Dr. N. Who made this mistake? Subject, in a conspiratorial tone. My leader. I trusted his judgment, but he was wrong to send me into that cruel life to be killed before my life got started. Dr. N. But you did agree to come into the body of Shabez. Subject, upset. I didn't know Earth would be such an awful place with full of terror. I wasn't given all the facts. The whole stupid life was a mistake, and my leader is responsible. Dr. N. Didn't you learn anything from this life? Subject, pause. I started to love. Yes, that was wonderful. My brother, parents, but it was so short. Dr. N. Did anything good come out of this life? Subject, my brother Ahmed, to be with him. Dr. N. Is Ahmed in your past or in your present life? Subject. Suddenly, my subject rises out of her chair. I can't believe it. Ahmed is my husband, Bill, the same person. How can... Dr. N. After calming my subject, I explain the process of soul transference to a new body and then continue. Do you see Ahmed on your return to the spirit world after dying as Shabez? Subject. Yes, our leader brings us together here, where we stay. Dr. N. Does Ahmed emit the same energy color as yourself, or are there differences? Subject. Pause. We are all white. Dr. N. Describe what you do there. Subject. While our leader comes and goes, Ahmed and I just work together. Dr. N. Doing what? Subject. We search out what we think about ourselves, our experiences on Earth. I'm still sore about us being killed so soon, but there was happiness, walking in the sun, breathing the air of Earth, love. Dr. N. Go back farther to the time before you and Ahmed had your life together, perhaps when you were alone. Was it like being created? Subject disturbed. I don't know. I was just here with thought. Dr. N. Do you remember during your own creation when you first began to think as an intelligent being? Subject. I realized I existed, but I didn't know myself as myself until I was moved into this quiet place alone with Ahmed. Dr. N. Are you saying your individual identity came more into focus when you began interacting with another soul entity besides your guide? Subject. Yes, with Ahmed. Dr. N. Keep to the time before Ahmed. What was it like for you then? Subject. Warm, nurturing, my mind opening. She was with me then. Dr. N. She? I thought your leader displayed a male gender to you. Subject. I don't mean him. Someone was around me with the presence of a mother and a father, mostly mother. Dr. N. What presence? I don't know. A soft light, changing features. I can't grasp it. Loving messages, encouragement. Dr. N. This was at the time of your creation as a soul? Subject. Yes. It's all hazy. There were others, helpers, when I was born. Dr. N. What else can you tell me about the place of your creation? Subject. Long pause. Others love me in a nursery when we left and I was with Ahmed and our leader. Dr. N. Who actually created you and Ahmed? Subject. The One. I have learned there seems to be a kind of spirit world maternity ward for newborn souls. One client told me, quote, this place is where infantile light is arranged in honeycomb fashion as unhatched eggs ready to be used, unquote. Wow. All right, so there's a couple things here I just want to point out. You have the iconography of the beehive going way, way back. I mean, you can find the cross, the beehive, and the flower, which are all three signs of Rosicrucians going back to metal steles found from the Hittite culture back in the Bronze Age. Not to mention the fact that they're also using the term of eggs as well, and as we all know, the egg and the whole yoni and the egg thing, the linga, is very associated with this kind of idea. So I just wanted to throw that out there real quick. In Chapter 4 on displaced souls, we saw how damaged souls can be quote-unquote remodeled. My conjecture is these creation centers described by Shabez have the same function in the next chapter. Case 22 will explain more about spiritual areas of ego creation where raw, undefined energy can be manipulated into a genesis of self. Case 20 has some obvious traits in the immature soul. The subject is a 67-year-old woman who has had a lifetime of getting into disastrous ruts. She does not demonstrate a generosity of spirit towards others, nor does she take much personal responsibility for her actions. This client came to me searching for answers as to why life had, quote, cheated me out of happiness, unquote. In our session, we learned Ahmed was her first husband, Bill. She left him long ago for another man whom she also divorced because of her inability to bond with people. She does not feel close to any of her children. The beginner soul may live a number of lives in a state of confusion and ineffectiveness. influenced by an Earth curriculum which is different from the coherence and supportive harmony of the spirit world. Less developed souls are inclined to surrender their will to the controlling aspects of human society with a socio-economic structure which causes a large proportion of people to be subordinate to others. Wow. It's just amazing. Like, I've read this book so many times, but it's amazing what's all the stuff that's gone on in the last 20 years and where we've come to this point. Just in this chapter alone, there's been a couple of statements like that are just incredible. Because I mean, you see the truth of the in the world around us. I mean, that's just fascinating to me. I don't know about you guys. Oh, whoops. Okay. Continuing. Let's see here. The inexperienced soul tends to be stifled by lack of independent thinking. They also lean towards being self-centered and don't easily accept others for who they are. It is not my intention to paint a totally bleak portrait of souls who compromise so much of our world population if my estimates of the high numbers of this category of soul are accurate. Lower level souls are also able to lead lives which have many positive elements. Otherwise, no one would advance. No stigma should be attached to these souls. Every soul once was a beginner. That's right. If we become angry, resentful, and confused by our life situation, this does not necessarily mean we possess an underdeveloped spirit. Soul development is a complex matter where we all progress by degrees in a variety of areas in an uneven manner. Okay, so this is another important statement here too, guys, because in all of these old mystery schools, I guess is for lack of a better word, every single one of them, I mean, the more we get into this, it really does seem like these people seem to have some kind of intuitional understanding of some of this stuff because, the way the mystery schools work is that it's the same way. They have this understanding that people have to progress in stages because a person can only handle so much. And so in a lot of these mystery schools, you just like in just like the way the Freemasons do their thing, the 33 degrees. And we're going to get into what the real significance of 33 is soon, but it's based on the same idea. So again, as above, so below. The whole idea here we are getting it. We see it being played out with these ideas in this book versus how not just the Freemasons, but other mystery schools from the ancient past have always kind of worked. You get initiated and you have to move yourself up through different types of goals and things like that. So let's see here. If we become angry, resentful, and confused by our life situation, this does not necessarily mean we possess an underdeveloped spirit. Soul development is a complex matter. Oh, yep, sorry. The important thing is to recognize our faults, avoid self-denial, and have the courage and self-sufficiency to make constant adjustments in our lives. Very good point. I 100% agree with that. Just on a simple way to look at a lot of this information. That's a good thing to think about, put in the back of your head. One of the clear indications that souls are coming out of novice status is when they leave their spiritual existence of relative isolation. They are removed from small family cocoons with other novices and placed in a larger group of beginner souls. At this stage, they are less dependent upon close supervision and special nurturing from their guides. For the younger souls, the first realization that they are part of a substantial group of spirits like themselves is a source of delight. Generally, I find this important spiritual event has occurred by the end of a fifth life on Earth. Regardless of the relative length of time, the novice soul was in semi-isolation. Some of the entities of these new spiritual groups are the souls of relatives and friends whom the young soul was associated in their past or their few past lives on Earth. What is especially significant about the information of a new cluster group is that other peer groups members are also newer souls who find themselves together for the first time. I need to take a quick sip. Oh, it's hot. In Chapter 7 on placement, we saw how a soul group appeared when Case 16 rejoined them, and the manner in which life experiences were studied through pictorial scenes as reported by this subject. Case 21 will offer a more detailed account of spiritual group dynamics and how members impact on each other. The capacity of souls to learn certain lessons may be stronger or weaker between one another depending upon inclination, motivation, and prior incarnation experience. Cluster groups are carefully designed to give peer support through a sensitivity of identity traits between all members. This cohesiveness is far beyond what we know on Earth. Although the next case is presented from the perspective of one group member, his superconscious mind provides an objectivity into the process of what goes on in groups. My subject will describe a grandiose, male-oriented spiritual group. This the raucous entities of this group are linked by exhibitionism, which would be labeled narcissistic. The common approaches these souls use in finding personal value is one indication that why they are working together. The extravagant modes of these souls is offset to some extent by their spiritual prescience. Since the complete truth is known by all group members about each other in a telepathic world, humor is indispensable. Some readers may find it hard to accept that souls do joke with each other about their failings, but humor is the basis upon which self-deception and hypocrisy are exposed. Absolutely. Ego defenses are so well understood by everyone in spiritual groups that evidence of mastery of one's self among peers is a strong incentive for change. Spiritual quote unquote therapy occurs because of honest peer feedback, mutual trust, and the desire to advance with others over eons of time. Soul can hurt and they need caring entities around them. The curative power of spiritual group interaction is quite remarkable. Soul members network by the use of criticism and acclaim as each strives towards common goals. Some of the best help I am able to give my clients comes from information I received about their soul group. Spiritual groups are a primary means of soul instruction. Learning appears to come as much from one's peers as from the skill of guides who monitor these groups. In the case which follows, my client has finished reliving his last life as a Dutch artist living in Amsterdam. He died of pneumonia at the young age in 1841, about the time he was gaining recognition for his painting. We have just rejoined his spiritual group when my subject burst out laughing. Case number 21. Dr. N. Why are you laughing? Subject. I'm back with my friends, and they're giving me a hard time. Dr. N. Why? Subject. Because I'm wearing my fancy buckled shoes and the bright green velvet jacket with yellow piping down the sides. I'm flashing them my big floppy painter's hat. Dr. N. They're kidding. They are kidding, but, sorry. They are kidding you about projecting yourself wearing these clothes? Subject. You know it. I was so vain about clothes, I cut a really fine figure as an artist in Amsterdam Cafe Society. I enjoyed this role and played it well. I don't want it to end. Dr. N. What happens next? Subject. My old friends are around me and we're talking about the foolishness of life. We rib each other about how dramatic it all is down there on Earth and how serious we all took our lives. Dr. N. You and your friends don't think it is important to take life on Earth seriously? Subject. Look. Earth is one big stage play. We all know that. Thank you, Mr. Shakespeare, or whoever you were. Again, these people, some of these people out there, they seem to have known something. Dr. N, and your group is united in this feeling? Subject, sure, we see ourselves as actors in a gigantic stage production. Dr. N, how many entities are in your particular cluster group in the spirit world? Subject, pause. Well, we work with some others, but there are 5 of us who are close. Dr. N, by what name do they call you? Subject, Lem. No, that's not right. It's Alum. That's me. Dr. N, all right, Alum, tell me about your close friends. Subject laughs. Norcross, he's the funniest. At least he's the most boisterous. Dr. N, is Norcross the leader of your group? Subject, no, he's just the loudest. We are all equal here, but we have our differences. Norcross is blunt and opinionated. Dr. N, really? Then how would you characterize his earth behavior? Subject, oh, as being rather unscrupulous, but not dangerous. Dr. N, who is the quietest and most unassuming member of your group? Subject, quizzical, how did you guess it? Velo. Dr. N, or Vilo, I'm going to say Velo. Dr. N, does this attribute make Velo the least effective contributing member of your group? Subject, where did you get that idea? Velo comes up with the most interesting thoughts about the rest of us. Dr. N, give me an example. Subject, in my life in Holland, the old Dutch couple who adopted me after my parents died, they had a beautiful garden. Velo reminds me of my debt to them, that the garden triggered my painting, to see life as an artist and what I didn't do with my talent. Dr. N, does Velo convey any other thoughts to you about this? Subject, sadly, I should have done less drinking and stuttering around and painted more. That my art was reaching the point of touching people. Subject pulls his shoulders back. But I wasn't going to stay cooped up painting all the time. Dr. N, do you have respect for Velo's opinions? Subject with a deep sigh, yes. We know he is our conscience. Dr. N. So what do you say to him? Subject. I say, quote, innkeeper, mind your own business. We're having fun too, unquote. Dr. N. Vilo was an innkeeper? Subject. Yes, in Holland, engaged in a business for profit, I might add. Dr. N. Do you feel this was wrong of Vilo? Subject. Contrite. No, not really. We all know he took losses to help those poor people and on the road who needed food and shelter. His life was beneficial to others. Dr. N. I would guess telepathic communication makes it hard to sustain your arguments when the complete truth is known by everyone. Subject. Yes, we know Vilo is progressing. Damn. Dr. N. Does it bother you that Vilo may be advancing faster than the rest of you? Subject. Yes. We have had such fun. Subject then recalls an earlier life with Vilo where they traveled together as brothers in India. Subject. What will happen to Vilo? Subject. I'm sorry, Dr. N. What will happen to Vilo? Subject. He was going to leave us soon. We all know that. To have associations with the others who have also gone. Dr. N. How many souls have left your original group, Alum? Subject. Long pause and then ruefully. Oh, a couple have moved on. We will eventually catch up to them, but not for a while. They haven't disappeared. We just don't see their energy as much. Dr. N. Name the others of your immediate group for me besides Vilo and Norcross. Subject brightening. Dubri and Trinian. Now those two know how to have a good time. Dr. N. What is the most obvious identifying characteristic of your group? Subject with relish. Adventure. Excitement. We have some real pioneer types around here. Subject rushes on happily. Dubri just came off a wild life as a sea captain. Norcross was a freewheeling trading merchant. We live life to its fullest because we are talented at taking what life has to offer. Dr. N. I'm hearing a lot of self-gratification here, Hallam. Subject defensively. And what's wrong with that? Our group is not made up of shrinking violets, you know. Dr. N. What's the story on Trinian's last life? Subject reacts boisterously. He was a bishop. Can you believe it? What hypocrisy. Oh, sorry, that was funny. Dr. N. In what way? Subject. What self-deception? Norcross, Dubry, and I tell Trinian his choice to be a churchman had nothing to do with goodness, charity, or spirituality. Dr. N. And what does Trinian's soul mentally project to you in self-defense? Subject. He tells us he gave solace to many people. Dr. N. What do you, Norcross, and Dubry tell him in response? Subject. That he's going soft. Norcross tells me he wanted money, or otherwise he would have been a simple priest. Ha! That's telling him. And I'm saying the same thing. You can guess what that Dubry thinks about this. Dr. N. No, tell me. Subject. Humph, that Trinian picked a large city with a rich cathedral, spilling a ton of money into Trinian's fat pockets. Dr. N. And what do you tell Trinian yourself? Oh, I'm attracted to the fancy robes he wore, bright red, the finest of cloths. His bishop's ring, which he loved, and all the gold and silver around. I also mentioned his desire to bask in adulation from his flock. Trinian can hide nothing from us. He wanted an easy, cushy life where he was well fed. Dr. N. Does he try to explain his motivation for choosing this life? Subject. Yes, but Norcross reproaches him. He confronts Trinian on seducing a young girl in the vestry. Naughty, naughty man. Jovially, yes, it actually happened. So much for providing solace to parishioners. We know Trinian for who he really is, an outright rogue. Dr. N. Does Trinian offer any excuse to the group for his conduct? Subject. Subject becomes quieter. Oh, the usual. He got carried away with the girl's need for him. He had no family. He was lonely in his choice of a celibate church life. He says he was trying to get away from the customary lives we all choose by going to the church that he fell in love with, or that he fell in love with the girl. Dr. N. And how do you, Norcross and Dubry, feel about Trinian now? Subject severely. We think he's trying to follow Vilo as an advanced soul, but he failed. His pious intentions just didn't work for him. Dr. N. Alum, you sound rather cynical about Trinian's attempt to improve himself and make changes. Tell me honestly, how do you feel about Trinian? Subject. Oh, we're just teasing him after all. Dr. N. Your amusement sounds as if you are scornful over what may have been Trinian's good intentions. Sadly. You're right, and we all know that. But, you see, Norcross, Dubry, and I, well, we don't want to lose him from the group, too. Dr. N. What does Vilo say about Trinian? Subject. He defends Trinian's original good intention and tells him that he fell into a trap of self-gratification during this life in the church. Trinian wants too much admiration and attention. Dr. N. Forgive me for passing judgment on your group, Alan, but it seems to me this is something you all want, except perhaps Vilo. Subject. Hey, Vilo can be pretty smug. Let me tell you. His problem is conceit, and Dubry tells him that in no uncertain terms. Dr. N. And does Vilo deny it? Subject. No, he doesn't. He says at least he's working on it. This chapter is it's so good. Dr. N, who among you is the most sensitive to criticism? Subject, pause. Oh, I guess it would be Norcross, but it's hard for all of us to accept our faults. Dr. N, level with me, Alum. Does it bother the members of your soul group when things can't be hidden from others, when all your shortcomings in a past life are revealed? Subject, pause. We are sensitive about it, but not morbid. There is great understanding here among us. I wanted to give artistic pleasure to people and grow through the meaning of art. So what did I do? I ran around the Amsterdam canals a lot at night and got caught up in the fun and games. My original purpose was pushed aside. Yeah, you know what? I'm sure there's so much of this that's going to connect with people too. Whether it's their own life or other people's lives around them. I mean, one just needs to stop and pay attention to the world around them. You know, you'll see a lot of the lessons being played out right in front of your eyes. Continuing, Dr. Aiden, if you admit all this to your group, what kind of feedback do you get? For example, how do you and Norcross regard each other? Subject. Norcross often points out, I hate to take responsibility for myself and others. With Norcross, it's wealth. He loves power, but we are both selfish, except that I am more vain. Neither of us gets many gold stars. Dr. N, how does Dubry fit into your group with his faults? Subject, he enjoys controlling others by leadership. He's a natural born leader more than the rest of us. He was a sea captain, a pirate, one tough individual. You wouldn't want to cross him. Dr. N, was he cruel? Subject, no, just hard. He was respected as a captain. Dubry was merciless against his opponents in sea battles, but he took care of his own men. Dr. N, you have told me that Velo assisted people who were in need on the road, but you haven't said much about the positive side of your lives. Is anyone in your group given any gold stars for unselfish acts? Subject, intently. There is something else about Dubry. Dr. N, what is that? Subject, he did one outstanding thing. Once, during heavy seas, a sailor fell off the mast into the ocean and was drowned. Dubry tied a line around his waist and dove off the deck. He risked his life and saved a shipmate. Dr. N, when this incident is discussed in your group, how do you all respond to Dubry? Subject, we praise him for what he did with admiration in our minds. We came to the same conclusion that none of us could match this single act of courage in our last lives. Dr. N, I see. Yet Velo's life at the inn, feeding and housing people who could not pay him, may represent acts of unselfishness for a longer term and therefore is more praiseworthy? Subject, granted, and we give him that. And he laughs. He gets more gold stars than Dubry. Dr. N, do you get any strokes from the group for your last life? Subject, pause. I had to scramble for patrons to survive as a painter, but I was good to people. It wasn't much. I enjoyed giving pleasure. My group recognizes I had a good heart. Every one of my clients has a special attachment to their soul group. Regardless of character makeup, people tend to think of souls in the free state as being without human deficiencies. Actually, I think there are many similarities between groups of souls close to each other and human family systems. For instance, I see Norcross as a rebellious scapegoat for this group of souls, while he and Alum are the inventory takers for everyone's shortcomings. Alum said Norcross is usually the first to openly scrutinize any rationalizations for or self-serving justifications of past life failures offered by the other members. He appeared to have the least self-doubt and emotional investment over standards of conduct. This may define his own insecurity because Norcross is probably fighting the hardest to keep up with the advancing group. I suspect Alum himself would be the group's mascot, often the youngest child in human families, with all his clowning around, preening, and making light of serious issues. Some souls in spiritual groups do seem to me to be more fragile and protected than other group members. Velo's conduct demonstrates he's a current hero or eldest family members with his drive for excellence. I have the impression from Alum that Velo is the least defiant of the group, partly because he has the best record of achievement in recent past lives. Just as in human family systems, the roles of spiritual group members can be switched around, but I was told Velo's kinetic energy is turning pink, signaling his growth into level 2. I attached human labels on ethereal spirits because, after all, souls who come to Earth do show themselves through human characteristics. However, I don't see hatred, suspicion, and disrespect in soul groups. In a climate of compassion, there is no power struggles for control among these peer groups whose members are unable to manipulate each other or keep secrets. Souls distrust themselves, not each other. I do see fortitude, desire, and the will to keep trying in their new physical lives. In an effort to confirm some of my observations about the social dynamics among spiritual group members in this case, I ask Alum a few more questions. And I just need to take a quick sip here. Dr. Allen, do you believe your criticism of each other is always constructive? Subject, sure, there is no real hostility. We have fun at each other's expense. I admit that, but it's just a form of acknowledgement of who we really are and where we should be going. Dr. N, is any member of your soul group ever made to feel shame or guilt about a past life? Subject, those are human weapons and too narrow for what we feel. Dr. N, well, let me approach your feelings as a soul in another way. Do you feel safer getting feedback from one of your group members more than another? Subject, no, I don't. We all respect each other immensely. The greatest criticism comes from within ourselves. Mm-hmm. That's right. Dr. N, do you have any regrets for your conduct in any past life? Subject, long pause. Yes. I feel sorry if I have hurt someone and then have everyone here know all about my mistakes. But we learn, Dr. N. And what do you do about this knowledge? Subject, talk among ourselves. We try to make amends the next time. Dr. N. From what you told me earlier, I had the idea that you, Norcross, and Dubry might be releasing some pent-up feelings over your own shortcomings by dumping on each other. Subject, thoughtfully. We make cynical remarks, but it's not like being human anymore. Without our bodies, we take criticism a little differently. We see each other for who we are without resentment or jealousy. And I just want to say that this is a possibility here in this existence. Okay? One can change their mind and through meditation and through the course of their spiritual journey will eventually come to that conclusion. And when that does happen, it is a life-changing kind of thing. I will just say that through my own experience. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I just wondered if all this flamboyance exhibited by your group might indicate underlying feelings of unworthiness. Subject, oh, that's something else again. Yes, we do get discouraged as souls and feel unworthy about our abilities to meet the confidence placed in us to improve. Dr. N, so while you have self-doubts about yourselves, it's okay to make cynical remarks about each other's motivations? Subject, of course, but we want to be recognized by one another for being sincere and working on our individual programs. Sometimes self-pride gets in the way, and we use each other to move past this. In the next passage of dialogue, I introduce another spiritual phenomenon relating to group healing. I have heard a number of variations about this activity, which are supported by the interpretations of Case 21. Dr. N. Now, Alum, as long as we are discussing how your group members relate to each other, I want to discuss the spiritual energy by which you are all assisted in this process. Subject, hesitant. I'm not sure I can tell you. No, Dr. N. Think carefully. Isn't there another means by which your group is brought into harmony with each other with intelligent energy? Subject, long pause. Ah, you mean from the cones. Dr. N. The word cone, quote unquote, is new to me, but I know I'm on the right track. Yes, the cones. Explain what you know about them relative to your group. Subject, slowly. Well, the cones do assist us. Dr. N. Please continue and tell me what the cone does. I think I have heard about this before, but I want your version. Subject. It's shaped to go around us, you know. Dr. N. Shaped in what way? To try to be more explicit. Subject, it's cylindrical, very bright. It is above and all around us. The cone is small at the top and wide at the bottom, so it fits over us like getting under a white cap. We can float under the cone in order to use it. Okay. Just really quick. In Sardinia, you have what's called cairns, right? And a cairn is built exactly the way that this person is describing what a cone is. And interestingly enough, if you guys have never been or don't, there's a channel on YouTube. I'm sure many of you know it already. It's the New Earth channel. And she has a couple of expeditions where she goes into Sardinia, into many of these cairns, which, like I said, is built exactly like this. Okay, and the funny thing is that inside the cairn is a completely different frequency. And when she was bringing her little GoPro and she would walk into it, you could hear it you could hear the sound itself being distorted when she walked in and out of it. It was actually really cool. But they're all over the place in Sardinia, and Sardinia was one of these places which was a huge settlement of the Phoenician Carthaginians. So again, just wanted to throw that out there. Also, in the United States, and I'll be doing a video on this at some point, When the settlers came to the East Coast, they found cairns everywhere. And the natives had no idea who built them, according to history. So, but getting back to this, the cylindrical thing. Dr. N, are you sure this isn't the shower of healing you experienced right after you returned to the spirit world? Subject, oh no, that was more individual purification to repair earth damage. I thought you knew. Dr. N, I do. I want you to explain how the cone is different from the shower of healing. Subject, the top funnels energy down as a waterfall in a spreading circle around all of us and allows us to really concentrate on our mental sameness as a group. Dr. N, and what do you feel when you are under the cone? Subject, we can feel all our thoughts being expanded, then drawn up, returning back with more knowledge added. Dr. N, does this intelligent energy help your unity as a group in terms of more focused thinking? Subject, yes, it does. Dr. N, deliberately confrontational. To be frank with you, Alum, I wonder if this cone is brainwashing your original thoughts. Oh, he's so sneaky sometimes. After all, the arguments and disagreements between you and the others of your group are what make you individuals. Subject, laughs. We aren't brainwashed. You don't know anything about the afterlife. Or don't you know anything about the afterlife? It gives us more collective insight to work together. Subject, is this the cone? Is the cone always available? Subject, it is there when we need it. Dr. N, who operates the cone? Subject, those who watch over us. Dr. N, your guide? Subject bursts out laughing. Chateau? I think he's too busy traveling around on his circuit. Dr. N, what do you mean? Subject, we think of him as a circus master, a stage manager of our group. Dr. N, does Chateau take an active part in your group deliberations? Subject shakes head, not really. Guides are above a lot of this stuff. We are left on our own quite a bit, and that's fine. Dr. N, do you think there's one specific reason for the absence of Chateau? Subject pause. Oh, he probably gets bored with our lack of progress. He loves to show off as the master of ceremonies, though. Dr. N, in what way? Subject chuckling. Oh, to suddenly appear in front of us during one of our heated debates, throwing off blue sparks, looking like a wizard who is an all-powerful moderator. Dr. N, a wizard? Subject, still laughing. Chateau appears in long sapphire blue robes with a tall pointed hat. With his flowing white beard, he looks simply great, and we do admire him. Dr. N, I get the picture of a spiritual Merlin. Subject, an oriental Merlin, if you will, very inscrutable sometimes. He loves making a grand entrance in full costume, especially when we are about to choose another life. He knows how much we appreciate his act. Dr. N, with all this stage management, I am curious if Chateau has much emotional connection to your group as a serious guide. Subject, scoffing at me, listen, he knows we are a wild bunch, and he plays to that as a nonconformist himself, but he is also very wise. Dr. N, is Chateau indulgent with your group? He doesn't seem to limit your extravagance very much. Subject, Chateau gets results from us because he is not heavy-handed or preachy. That wouldn't sit well with our people. We respect him. Dr. N, do you see Chateau as a consultant who comes only once in a while to observe or as an active supervisor? Subject, he will pop in unannounced to set up a problem for our discussion. Then he leaves, coming back later to listen to how we might solve certain things. Dr. N, give me an example of a major problem with your group. Subject, pause. Chateau knows we identify too much as actors playing parts on Earth. He hits on superficiality. He's trying to get us to cast ourselves from the inside out rather than the reverse. Dr. N, so Chateau's instruction is serious, but he knows you all like to have fun along the way. Subject, yeah, that's why Chateau is with us, I think. He knows we waste opportunities. He assists us in interpreting the predicaments we get into in order to get the best out of us. Dr. N, from what you have told me, I have the impression that your spiritual group is run as a kind of workshop directed by your guide. Subject, yes, he builds up our morale and keeps us going. Unlike educational classrooms or therapy groups on Earth, I have learned teacher counselors in the spirit world are not confined as group activity leaders on a continuous basis. Although Chateau and his students are a colorful family of souls, there is much here that is typical of all cluster groups. A guide's leadership is more parental than dictatorial. In this case, Chateau is a directive counselor while not being possessive, nor does he pose a threat to the group. There is a warm acceptance of these young souls by the emphatic guide who seems to cater to their masculine inclinations. I will close this case with a few final questions about the group as a spiritual unit. Dr. N, why is your group so male-oriented on Earth? Subject, Earth is an action planet which rewards physical exertion. We are inclined to male roles so we can grab hold and mold events, to dominate our surroundings, to be recognized. Dr. N. Women are also influential in society. How can your group hope to progress without more experiences in female roles? Subject. We know this, but we have such a fierce desire to be independent. In fact, we often expend too much energy for too little return. But the female aspects don't interest us much right now. Dr. N. If you have no female counterparts in your immediate group, where do you go for entities to complement your lives on Earth? Subject. Nearby, there are some who relate better to female roles. I get along with Josie. She has been with me in some of my lives. Trinian is attached to Nyala, and there are others. Dr. Alum, I would like to end our conversation about our spiritual associations by asking you what you know about the origins of your group. Origin of your group. Subject. Long pause. I can't tell you. We just came together at one time. Dr. N. Well, someone had to bring those of you with the same attributes together. Do you think it was God? Subject puzzled. No, below the source, the higher ones. Dr. N. Chateau, or the other guides like him? Subject. No, higher, I think. The planners. I don't know anymore. Dr. N. A while back you told me some of your old friends were reducing their active participation in your group due to their development. Do you ever get new members? Excuse me. Subject. Never. Dr. N. Is this because a new member might have trouble assimilating with the rest of you? Subject laughs. We aren't that bad. It's just we are too closely connected for by thought for an outsider, and they would not have shared our past experiences. Dr. N. During your discussions about these past lives together, does your group believe it contributes to the betterment of society, of human society? Excuse me. Subject pause. We want our presence in a community to challenge conventions, to question basic assumptions. I think we bring nerve into our physical lives and laughter, too. Dr. N. And when your spirit group has finished discussing what is necessary to further your aims, do you look forward to a new life? Subject zestfully. Oh, yeah. Every time I leave for a new role on Earth, I say goodbye with, quote, see you back here, AD, after death, unquote. Sorry, I have a little itch in my throat. This case is an example of like-minded souls with ego-inflating needs who support and validate each other's feelings and attitude. Herein lies the key to understanding the formation of soul groups. I have learned that many spiritual clusters have subgroups made up of entities whose identities are linked by similar issues blocking their advancement. Even so, these souls do have differences in strengths and weaknesses. Each group member contributes their best attributes towards advancing the goals of others in the family. I do not want to leave the impression from Case 21 that the few remaining souls in this inner circle of close friends represent the behavior traits of everyone in the original cluster. When a primary group of, say, 15 or 20 souls is formed, there are marked similarities in talent and interests. But a support group is also designed to have differences in disposition, feelings, and reactions. Typically, my subjects report a male-female oriented mixture of one or more of the following character types in their groups. Number 1, courageous, resilient, a tenacious survivor. Number 2, gentle, quiet, devoted, and rather innocent. Number 3, fun-loving, humorous, a jokester, and a risk-taker. Number 4, serious, dependable, cautious. Number 5, flamboyant, enthusiastic, frank. Number 6, patient, steady, perceptive. Number 7, thoughtful, calculating, determined. Number 8, innovative, resourceful, and adaptable. These differences give a group balance. However, if an entire group displays a strong tendency towards flamboyance or daring, the most cautious members would appear less so to another group of souls. There is no question that the souls in Case 21 are in for a long development period. They do contribute to the vitality of Earth. Subsequent questioning of this subject revealed the paths of these souls continued to cross in the 20th century. For instance, Alum is a graphic designer and part-time professional guitar player involved with Josie, who is a singer. The fact that the closely knit souls in this group were so male-oriented in their physical lives does not take away from their ability to associate with young souls with predominantly female preferences. Cluster groups are gender mixed, as I have mentioned. Truly advanced souls have balanced gender preferences in their physical life choices. The desire for expression of self-identity is an important motivation factor for souls choosing to come to Earth to learn practical lessons. Sometimes the reason for discomfort with the lower-level soul is the discrepancy in perception of self in their free soul state, compared to how they act in human bodies. Souls can get confused with who they are in life. Case 21 did not seem to exhibit any conflict in this area, but I question the rate of growth achieved by Alum in recent past lives. However, the basic experience of living a life may compensate to some extent for the lack of insight gained from that life. Our shortcomings and moral conflicts are recognized as faults far more in the spirit world than on earth. We have seen how the nuances of decision making are directed and analyzed in spiritual groups. Cluster members have worked together for a long time in Earth years that entities become accountable to each other and the group as a whole. This fosters a great sense of belonging in all spiritual groups and can give the appearance of thought barriers between clusters, especially with souls in lower levels. Nevertheless, while rejection and loneliness is part of every soul's life in human form, in the spirit world, our individual ego identity is constantly enhanced by warm peer group socialization. The social structure of soul groups is not the same as groups of people on Earth. Although there is some evidence of paired friendships, I don't hear about cliques, stars of attractions, or isolated souls within clusters. I'm told souls do spend time alone in the silence of personal reflection when attached to a group. Souls are intimate entities in their family relationships on Earth and engaged in group community life in the spirit world. And yet, souls do learn much from solitude. I understand from my white light of subjects that souls at the beginning levels are frequently separated from their groups to individually work on simple energy projects. One rather young soul recalled being alone in an enclosure trying to put together, quote, a moving puzzle, unquote, of disassembled geometric shapes of cylinders, spheres, cubes, squares, and self produced energy. And the parallelisms just keep going on. I mean, this is the same thing we do as children, right? With the same toys, the same kind of learning ideas, trying to understand these kinds of like concepts, spatiality, things like that. Fascinating. It was described as being, quote, multi-dimensional, colorful, and holographic, unquote, in nature. Oh, that would be cool. He said, we, quote, have to learn to intensify our energy to bring the diffused and jumbled into focus and to give it some kind of basic shape, unquote. Another subject added, quote, these tests give the watchers information about our imagination, creativity, and ingenuity, and they offer us encouragement rather than being judgmental, unquote. Souls on all levels engage in another all important activity when they are alone. They are expected to spend time mentally concentrating on helping those on Earth or other physical worlds whom they have known and cared about. From what I can gather, they go to a space some call the place of projection. Here they enter a quote interdimensional field of floating silvery blue energy unquote and project outwards to a geographical area of their choosing. I am told this is a mental exercise in quote holding and releasing positive vibrational energy to create a territory unquote. This means souls ride on their thought waves to specific people, building, or a given area of land in an attempt to comfort or affect change. How interesting. I have to go and put a little piece of wood real quick in my stove, and let's see here, forever flat. The majority of people these days are in false states, so they act like they don't have a soul because they're brainwashed to believe so. And I would absolutely agree with you 100% with that statement. And one of the things I definitely want to agree with you on that is that it's not by accident. It's absolutely on purpose. So just, you know, our education system, the media, all this stuff. It goes all the way back to the 1800s. And if you guys have never seen that video I did on the Kuleshov effect, you should check that out. It's a short video, but it just goes to show you that way back in the 1800s, they were already planning on teaching us quote unquote through projection. And they said it right in your face through artwork. It's crazy. Anyways, I'll be back in just 1 minute. Okay, I'm back, and we shall continue. Chapter 10. The Intermediate Soul. Quick sip. Once our souls advance past level 2 into the intermediate ranges of development, group cluster activities is considerably reduced. Let me just make sure everything is working good. Yep, okay. This does not mean we return to the kind of isolation we saw with the novice soul. Souls evolving into the middle development levels have less association with primary groups because they have acquired the maturity and experience for operating more independently. These souls are also reducing the number of their incarnations. Within levels 3 and 4, we are at last ready for more serious responsibilities. The relationship we have with our guides now changed from teacher-student to one of colleagues working together. Since our old guides have acquired new student groups, it is now our turn to develop teaching skills, which will eventually qualify us for the responsibilities of being a guide to someone else. I have said the transitional stages of levels 2 and 4 are particularly difficult for me in pinpointing a soul's development. For instance, some level 4 souls begin targeting themselves towards primary cluster teacher trainings while still in level 3, while other subjects who are clearly level 4s find they are unsuited to be effective guides. Despite their high standards of morality and conduct, entities who have reached the intermediate levels of maturity are modest about their achievements. Naturally, each case is different, but I notice more composure with clients in this stage and above. I see trust rather than suspicion towards the motives of others on both a conscious and subconscious level. These people demonstrate a forward-looking attitude of faith and confidence for the future of humanity, which encourages those around them. My questions to the more mature soul are directed to esoteric ideas of purpose and creation. I admit to taking advantage of the higher knowledge possessed by these souls for the sort of spiritual information others lack. There have been clients who have told me they felt I pushed them rather hard in drawing out their spiritual memories, and I know they are right. The more advanced souls of this world possess remarkable comprehension of a universal life plan. I want to learn as much as possible from them. Yeah, who wouldn't? My next case falls into the upper portion of level 3 development, radiating a yellow energy devoid of any reddish tones. This client was a small, nondescript man nearly 50 years old. His demeanor was quietly courteous towards me when we met, and I thought him a trifle solemn. I felt his unassuming detachment was somewhat studied, almost as a cover for stronger emotions. The most striking feature about him was his dark, morose eyes, which grew more intense as he began to talk about himself in a direct, persuasive manner. He told me he worked for a charitable organization dispensing food to the homeless and that he had once been a journalist. This client had traveled quite some distance to discuss with me his concern over a decline in enthusiasm for his work. He said he was tired and wanted to spend the rest of his life quietly alone. His first session involved a review of the highlights of many past lives so we could better evaluate a proper course for the remainder of this current life. I began by regressing the subject rapidly through a series of early lives, starting from his first life as a Cro-Magnon man in the Stone Age culture some 30,000 years ago. As we moved forward in time, I noted a consistency of lone wolf behavior, patterns as opposed to normal tribal integration. From about 3000 BC to 500 BC, my client lived a number of lives in the Middle East during the rise of the early city-states in Sumerian, Babylonian, and Egyptian cultures. Nevertheless, even in lives as a woman, this subject often avoided family ties, including having no children. As a man, he showed a preference for nomadism. By the time we reached a life in Europe during the Dark Ages, I was becoming accustomed to a rebellious soul resisting tyrannical societies. During his lives, my subject worked to uplift people from fear while remaining non-aligned to opposing factions. Suffering hardships and many setbacks, he continued as a wanderer with an obsession for freedom of movement. Some lives were not too productive, but during the 12th century I found him in Central America in the body of an Aztec, organizing a band of Indians against the oppressions of a high priest. He was killed in this setting as a virtual outcast, while promoting non-violent relations between tribes who were traditional enemies. In the 14th century, this soul was a European chronicler traveling the Silk Road to Cathay. Oh, I might actually even know who this is. I actually might have this person's book. Anyways, traveling the Silk Road to Cathay, which is China, by the way, and also known as Tartary, to gain understanding of the peoples of Asia, always facile with languages as he is today. My client died in Asia as an old man, happily living in a peasant village. In Japan, at the beginning of the 17th century, he was a member of the clan of the Bleeding Crane. These men were respected independent samurai mercenaries. At the end of this life, my subject was living in a seclusion from the ruling Tokugawa shoguns because he had advised their weaker opponents on battle strategy. Frequently, the outsider, always an explorer, searching for truth across many lands, this soul continued to seek a rational meaning to life while giving aid to those he met along the way. I was surprised when he popped up as the wife of an American farmer on the frontier in the 19th century. The farmer died soon after their marriage. I learned my subject had deliberately incarcerated, had deliberately, incarnate. The farmer died soon after their marriage. I learned my subject had deliberately incarnated to be a widow with children, tied to a piece of property as an exercise in the loss of mobility. When this part of his session ended, I knew I was working with a more advanced older soul, even though he had a great many lives we did not review. Since this soul is approaching level 4, I would not have been surprised if his first appearance on Earth had gone back 70,000 years rather than half that amount of time. However, as I have mentioned, it is not an absolute prerequisite that souls have hundreds of physical lives in order to advance. I once had a client who entered into a level 3 state of awareness only after 4,000 years, an outstanding performance. um, my talk to my client about his current life and his customary methods of learning in previous lives. He explained to me he had never been married and that social non-alignments work best for him. I suggested a few alternatives for his consideration. Primarily, I felt his lack of intimacy with people in too many lives was obstructing his progress. When this session ended, he was anxious that we explore his mind further for perceptions about the spirit world in another session. Upon his arrival the next day, I placed him in a superconscious state and we went back to work. Case 22. Dr. M. By what name are you called in the spirit world? Subject. I am called Nentham. Dr. N. Nentham, do you have spirits around you now or are you alone? Subject. Pause. I am with two of my longtime companions. Dr. N. What are their names? Subject. Raoul and Senji. Dr. N. Are the three of you part of a larger spiritual group of souls working together? Subject. We were, but now the three of us work more by ourselves. Dr. N. What are the three of you doing at this moment? Subject. We are discussing the best way to help each other during our incarnations. Dr. N. Tell me what you do for each other. Subject. I help Senji to forgive herself for mistakes and appreciate her own worth. She needs to stop being a mother figure all the time on Earth. Dr. N. How does she assist you? Subject. To see my lack of sense of belonging. Dr. N. Give me an example of Senji's action to assist you with this issue. Subject. Well, she was my wife in Japan after many days as a warrior were over. Something is troubling Nentham, and after a pause, he adds the following. Raoul likes to pair with Senji, and I am usually alone. Dr. N. What about Raoul? How do you two help each other? Subject. I help him with patience, and he helps me with my tendency to avoid community life. Dr. N. Are you always two males and a female in your incarnations on Earth? Subject. No, we can change and do, but this is comfortable for us. Dr. N. Why are the three of you working independently from the rest of the spiritual group? Subject. Pause. Oh, we see them here. Some have not gone forward with us. A few others are further ahead of us in their tasks. Dr. N. Do you have a guide or a teacher? Subject in a soft tone. She is Edis. Dr. N. It sounds to me, if you have a high regard for her, do you communicate well with Edis? or Idis? I'll think I'll call her Idis. It sounds better. Subject. Yes, I do. Not that we don't have our disagreements. Dr. N. What is the main area of conflict between the two of you? Subject. She doesn't reincarnate much, and I tell her she should have more direct exposure to current conditions on Earth. Dr. N. Are you mentally in tune with Idis to such a extent that you know all about her background, training as a guide? Subject shakes his head while pondering. It isn't that we can't ask questions, but we can only question what we know. Idis reveals to me what she thinks is relevant to my own experience. Dr. N. Are guides able to screen their thoughts so you can't read their minds completely? Subject. Yes, the older ones get proficient at that, knowing how to filter things we don't need to know because this knowledge would confuse us. Same happens on Earth, doesn't it? Dr. N. Will you learn to filter images? Subject. I already have, a little. Dr. N. This must be why I have had many people tell me they have not been given the definitive answers by their guides to all their questions. Subject. Yes, and the intent of the question is important. When was asked and why. Perhaps it was not their best interest to be given certain information which might disrupt them. Dr. N. Aside from her teaching techniques, are you fond of Itis in terms of her identity? Subject. Yes, I just wish she would agree to come with me once. Dr. N. Oh, would you would like to actually have an Earth incarnation with her? Subject grins mischievously. I have told her we might relate better here if she would consent to come to Earth sometime and mate with me. Dr. N. And what does Ida say to that suggestion? Subject. She laughs and says she will think about it if I can prove to her that it would be productive. At this junction, I asked Nentham how long Itis has been associated with him and learned she was assigned these three entities when they moved into level 3. Nentham, Raoul, and Senji are also under the tutelage of a beloved older master guide who has been with them since the beginning of their existence. It would be inaccurate to assume that more advanced spirits lead lonely spiritual lives. This subject told me he was in contact with many souls. Raoul and Senji were simply his closest friends. Level 3 and 4 are significant stages for souls in their development because now they are given increased responsibilities for younger souls. The status of a guide is not given to us all at once. However, as with many other aspects of soul life, we are carefully tested. The intermediate levels are trial periods for potential teachers. While our aura is still yellow, our mentors assign us a soul to look after and then evaluate our leadership performance both in and out physical incarnations. Only if this preliminary training is successful are we allowed to function even at a level of a junior guide. Not everyone is suited for teaching, but this does not keep us from becoming an advanced soul in the blue section. Guides, like everyone else, have different abilities and talents as well as shortcomings. By the time we reach level 5, our soul aptitudes are well known in the spirit world. We are given occupational duties commensurate with our abilities, which I will go into later in this chapter. Different avenues of approach to learning eventually bring all of us to the same end in acquiring spiritual wholeness. The richness and diversity is part of a master plan for the advancement of every soul, and I am interested in how Case 22 is progressing in level 3. I think that's a really great point. Look, so he's making this distinction within the spirit world, but yet again, I'm sure you guys have been picking up a lot on this. There is a heck of a lot of stuff here within the spirit world, which is mirrored in the physical world. We still have these same issues that we struggle with, and so, if this book and the information that this provides, and at the end of this, I'm going to do a kind of a post video to show just how prevalent this kind of stuff is nowadays, and how many more people are reaching out into these kinds of things. Um, and realizing that it's true. Imagine living your life understanding that, we're all just placed here. It's by our choice, but we all have lessons to learn. Every single one of us, anyone who was incarnated on this planet, is here for a reason, if not many, many reasons. And so this idea that we can hate each other and have all this judgment and all this kind of stuff, and we really don't even understand judgment as human beings, anyways. But even in the spiritual sense of things, like, how much damage have we done to ourselves? And I blame the priest class for this of all religions. But how much damage have we done to ourselves to separate ourselves from each other, and instead of realizing that, yeah, we're all in the same game, and having that respect about that fact, and just having that respect internally in your heart, in your soul, in your own soul, in your own self, is important, because it really, it can really make a big difference about lifting a spiritual weight off of your shoulders. And I say that through absolute experience, at least in my own experience. So, continuing with, continue with case 22 here. Dr. N. Nentham, can you tell me if ITIS is preparing you to be a guide, assuming you have an interest in that activity? Subject, quick response. I do have an interest. Dr. N. Oh, then are you developing as a guide yourself? Subject, modestly. Don't make too much of it. I'm really not more than a caretaker. I'm helping Itis and taking directions. Dr. N. Do you try and imitate her teaching style? Subject, no, we are different. As an apprentice, a caretaker, I couldn't do what she's able to accomplish anyway. Dr. N. When did you know you were ready to be a caretaker and begin assisting others spiritually? Subject. It's an awareness which comes over you after a great number of lives, that you are more in balance with yourself than previously and are able to aid people as a spirit and in flesh. Dr. N. Are you operating in or out of the spirit world as a caretaker at this time? Subject. Has difficulty in forming a response. I'm out. In two lives. Dr. N. Are you living in two parallel lives now? Subject. Yes, I am. Dr. N. Where are you living in this other life? Subject. Canada. Dr. N. Is geography important to your Canadian assignment? Subject. Yes, I picked a poor family in a rural community where I'd be more indispensable. I'm in a small mountain town. Dr. N. Give me the details of this Canadian life and your responsibilities. Subject slowly. I'm taking care of my brother Billy. His face and hands were horribly burned by a flash fire from a kitchen stove when he was 4 years old. I was 10 when it happened. Dr. N. Are you the same age in the Canadian life as you are now in your American one? Subject. About the same. Dr. N. And your prime assignment in the Canadian life? Subject. To care for Billy, to help him see the world past his pain. He is almost blind, and his facial disfigurement causes him to be rejected by the community. I try to open him to an acceptance of life and to know who he really is from the inside. I read to him and go for walks in the forest holding his arm. I don't know, I'll hold his hand because they're so damaged. Dr. N. What about your Canadian parents? Subject without boasting. I am the parent. My father left after the fire and never came back. He was a weak man who was not kind to the family even before the fire. My mother's soul is not very capable in her body. They need someone with seasoning. Dr. N. Someone physically strong? Subject laughing. No, I'm a woman in Canada. I'm Billy's sister. My mother and brother require someone mentally tough to hold the family together and give them a course to follow. Dr. N. And this is, look, just on the conversation that he had earlier about the female male kind of thing. I mean, this is an amazing example of the power of femininity, and how there needs to be a lot more respect on on that side of things, because you know what, this whole like anti-male, anti-feminist, all these other things, it's so crazy, and I wish people would just stop I don't know, reducing themselves to these base ideas, and realize that there's a much broader thing going on here, and to have respect for both sides, because they both have absolutely amazing power and goodness and evil also, but just amazing possibilities that both can bestow, in their own special way, and that's so continuing. Dr. N, how do you provide for the family? Subject, I'm a baker and I'll never marry because I can't leave them. Dr. N, what is your brother's major lesson? Subject, to acquire humility without being crushed by a life of little self gratification. Dr. N, why didn't you take the role of your burned brother? Wouldn't that scenario provide you with a more difficult challenge? Subject, grimacing, I've already been through that one. Note, this subject has been physically injured in a number of past lives. Where did I? Oh, there it is. Dr. N. Yes, I suppose you have. I wonder if Billy's soul was ever involved with physical hurting you in one of your past lives. Subject. As a matter of fact, he did in one of them. When I was the sufferer, another caretaker stayed with me, and I was a grateful receiver. Now it is Billy's turn, and I am here for him. Dr. N. You know in advance your brother was going to be incapacitated before you came into the Canadian life? Subject. Sure. Itis and I discovered the whole situation. She said Billy's soul would require a caretaker, and since I had negative contact with his soul before in another life, I welcomed the job. Yeah, and this is another thing too, and you guys are going to see this more as we get along in this book, okay? But especially towards the end chapters when people choose to reincarnate. This is another portion of what people would call free will. Souls choose to do these things. So, this is a good example. In another life, Billy and him had a negative reaction to each other. And so in this life, the discussion, the decision by the soul to do this was to essentially make up for this karma and have, and to sort of cancel that type of thing out. And so, again, there's a reason why, well, let's just say this. the major things that happen in your life, okay? The things that define you, the good, the bad, the unexpected, all these things that you have zero control over, but were upheavals of some sort. Um, if you're paying attention to this book and you are sort of, if something that is connecting with you, realize something and maybe sit back later on and meditate on this idea. But think it back and think about how the major events in your life have made you into the person you are, um, and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. And don't be overly judgmental. Just lay it all out on the table and look at the whole thing at what it is, and imagine for a second how these things, these major events that you had no control over, are quite possibly things that you chose to have to go through in this life. And what does that mean for you in this life now? And that's a question for everyone to ask themselves. I have delved deep into this, and that's one of the things that's really enabled me to feel a lot more freedom spiritually than I ever have in my life, because again, self-realization is kind of the key here. And in order to do that, you really have to drill down into who you and what you are and the things that really bother you, and do these kinds of things. And to realize that your life here is here for a reason. And that we don't, if we take that for granted, then we take it for granted. That's not a big deal. But if we don't take it for granted and we face life the way, with this knowledge behind us, okay, it makes things a little bit easier to step forward and to deal with people, because you'll understand too, especially with the conflict in people's lives. These things are set in front of you to deal with. And how you deal with it is how you are going to have to deal with it in the spirit world, as we obviously are seeing within this book. Again, if you buy into this, so obviously all of this is your choice, guys. I think I personally believe in this. But one of the reasons I wanted to share with this book with you guys is because there are so many crazy connections that are coming to the other research that I'm doing, and I blurted out a little bit of it about the Karens earlier, but we're going to come back to this over and over again, because this is related, and it's part of the big secret of how they control this whole planet and control our minds. So continuing. Dr. N, besides the karmic lesson for Billy's soul, there are some for you too, in terms of your being in the role of a woman who is tied down. You can't just shake off and roam around as you often do in your lives. Subject, that's true. The degree of difficulty in a life is measured by how challenging the situation is for you, not others. See what I'm saying? For me, being Billy's caretaker is harder than when I was on the receiving end with another soul as my caretaker. Dr. N, give me the most difficult factor of this assignment for you as a caretaker. Subject, to sustain a child through their helplessness to adulthood, to teach a child to confront torment with courage. Dr. N, Billy's life is an extreme example, but it does seem Earth's children have much physical and emotional pain to go through. Subject, without addressing and overcoming pain, you can never really connect with who you are and build on that. It's exactly what I was just saying. I must tell you, the more pain and adversity which one comes to you as a child, the more opportunity to expand your potential, if one realizes it. I'll add that as a caveat to that, because that's another thing, is that, yes, there's a lot of trauma that happens in this world, but if all we're told that we're just a bunch of, blood bags with bones, we're just a bunch of physical things that are just going to go by the way of the dust when it's all done, and that's it, then, what's the point of people actually living in this way or thinking in this way? You see what I'm saying? Continuing, Dr. N, and how are things working out for you as a caretaker in Canada? Subject, there is a more difficult set of choices to be made in the Canadian family, unlike my American life, but I have confidence in myself. I put my comprehension to practical use. Dr. N, did I encourage or discourage your wanting to accelerate development by living parallel lives? Subject, she is always open about this. I haven't done it too much in the past. Dr. N, why not? Subject, life combinations can be tiring and divisive. The effort may become counterproductive and diminish returns for both lives. Dr. N, well, I see that you are helping people in both your lives today, but have you ever lived contrasting lives where you did poorly in one life and better in another at the same time? Subject: Yes, although that was a long time ago on Earth. This is one of the advantages of life combinations. One life can offset the other. Still, doing this can be rough going. Dr. N. Then why do the guides permit parallel lives? Subject, scowling at me: Souls are not in a rigid bureaucratic environment. We are allowed to make mistakes in judgment and learn from them. Dr. N. I have the impression you think the average soul is better off living one life at a time. Subject: I would say yes, in most instances, but there are other motivations to cause us to speed up incarnations. Dr. N. Such as? Subject, amused: The reward for bunching up lives can allow for more reflection out of incarnation. Dr. N. You mean the rest periods between lives might last longer for us after concurrent lives? Subject smiles. Sure. Takes longer to reflect on two lives than one. Dr. N. Nantham, I have a couple more questions on the mechanics of soul splitting. How do you see the manner in which you divide your soul energy into various parts? Pardon me, I need to take a quick sip. Subject: We are as particles of energized units. We originated out of one unit. Dr. N. What was the original unit? Subject: The maker. Dr. N. Does each part of your soul remain intact, complete within itself? Subject: Yes, it does. Dr. N. Do all parts of our soul energy go out of the spirit world when we incarnate? Subject: Part of us never leaves, since we do not totally separate from the maker. All right, guys. So that right there is a very important sentence. I just want to highlight that for me for later. But even in the spirit world, you're never separated from that oneness, that thing we all call God. But interestingly enough, and in Buddhism, they don't concentrate on God because the main reason for this, or at least as far as I've studied it, is that they consider it a almost hindrance on even thinking about it, because you have so many other things that you have to deal with while on this planet, and by overthinking about the supreme being, then you may not actually be working on your karmic lessons that you're actually incarnated here to do. So, just throwing that out there. Continuing, Dr. N, what does the part that remains in the spirit world do while we are on Earth in one or more bodies? Subject: It is more dormant, waiting to be rejoined to the rest of our energy. Most of my colleagues who work with past life clients have listened to overlapping time chronologies from people living on Earth in two places at once. Occasionally, there are three or more parallel lives. Souls in almost any stage of development are capable of living multiple physical lives, but I really don't see much of this in my cases. I just lost myself. Oh, yeah. Many people feel the idea of souls having the capacity to divide in the spirit world and then attaching to two or more human bodies is against all their preconceptions of a singular individualized spirit. I confess that I too felt uncomfortable the first time a client told me about having parallel lives. I can understand why some people find the concept of soul duality perplexing, especially when faced with further proposition that one soul may even be capable of living in different dimensions during the same relative time. What we must appreciate is if our souls are all part of one great oversoul energy force which divides or extends itself to create our souls, then why shouldn't the offspring of this intelligent soul energy have the same capacity to detach and then recombine? Interesting question. Collecting information about spiritual activity from souls who are in the higher stages of development is sometimes frustrating. This is because the complex nature of memory and knowledge at these levels can make it difficult to sift out what these people recognize and won't tell me from what they really don't know. The case 22 was both knowledgeable and open to my question. This case is compatible with other accounts in my files about the diversity of soul training in the spirit world. Dr. N. Nentham, I want to return now to your activity in the spirit world when you are so busy with Earth incarnations, interacting in soul groups and learning to be a guide. Can you tell me of the other spiritual areas in which you are occupied? Subject: Long pause. Yes, there are other areas. I know of them. Dr. N. How many? Subject cautiously. I think 4. Dr. N. Would you call these areas of activity? Subject: The world without ego, the world of all knowing, the world of creation and non-creation, and the world of altered time. Dr. N, are they worlds which exist in our physical universe? Subject, one does. The rest are non-dimensional spheres of attention. Dr. N, all right, let's start with the non-dimensional spheres. Are these three areas in the spirit world for the use of souls? Subject, yes. Dr. N, why do you call all these spiritual areas worlds? Subject, I see them as habitations for spiritual life. Dr. N, so three of them are mental worlds. Subject, yes, that's what they are. Dr. N, what is the world without ego? Subject, it is the place to learn to, is the place of learning to be, right? Just it's like meditation for souls. I mean, I keep hammering on this thing, guys. There's a reason for it. Dr. N, I have heard of it expressed in different ways. Doesn't it involve the beginners? Yes, subject. Yes, the newly created soul is there to learn who they are. It's the place of origin. Dr. N, are the ego identities passed out at random, or is there a choice of beginner souls? Subject, the new soul is not capable of choice. You acquire your character based upon your way your energy is combined, put together for you. Dr. N, is there some sort of spiritual inventory of characteristics that are designed to souls, so much of one type, so much of another? Subject, long pause. I think many factors are considered in the allocations of that which makes us who we are. What I do know is, once given, ego becomes a covenant between oneself and the givers. That's an interesting word to use, isn't it? Dr. N, what does that mean? Subject, to the best I can with who I am. To do the best I can with who I am. Dr. N, so the purpose of this world is the distribution of soul identity by advanced beings? Subject, yes. The new soul is pure energy with no real self, yes, yet. The world without ego provides you with a signature. Dr. N, then why do you call it the world without ego? Subject, because the newly created souls arrive with no ego. The idea of self has not come into the new soul's consciousness. It is here where the soul is offered meaning to its existence. Dr. N, and does the creation of souls with personhood go on continually? Subject, as far as I know, yes. Dr. N, I want you to answer this next question carefully for me. When you acquire your particular identity as a soul, did that automatically mean you were slated for Earth incarnations in human form? Subject, not specifically, no. Planets don't last forever. Dr. N, I wondered if certain types of souls have an affinity for specific forms of physical life in the universe. Subject, pause. I won't argue against that. Dr. N, in your beginnings, Nentham, were you given the opportunity to choose other planetary hosts besides humans on Earth? Subjects, as a new soul, the guides assist in those selections. I was drawn to human beings. Dr. N, were you given other choices? Subject, long pause. Yes, but it's not very clear at the moment. They usually start you on an easy world or two without much to do. Then I was offered service on a severe planet. Dr. N, Earth is considered severe? Subject, yes. On some worlds, you must overcome physical discomforts, even suffering. Others lean towards mental contests. Earth has both. We get kudos for doing well on the hard worlds. Smiling, we are called the adventurous ones by those who don't travel much. Dr. N, what really appeals you about Earth? Subject, the kinship humans have for each other while they are struggling against one another, competing and collaborating all at the same time. Dr. N, isn't that a contradiction? Subject laughs. Again, that's the yin and the yang, right? Subject laughs, and that's also the play of duality. Sorry, it's continuing. Subject laughs. That's what appeals to me, mediating quarrels of a fallible race which has so much pride and need of self-respect. The human brain is rather unique, Dr. N. How? Subjects. Humans are egocentric but vulnerable. They can make their character mean and yet have a great capacity for kindness. There is weak and courageous behavior on Earth. It's always a push me, pull you tug of war going on with human values. This diversity suits my soul. Isn't that true, man? Jeez. What are some of the other things about human hosts which might appeal to the souls who are sent to Earth? Subject. Those of us developing on Earth have a sanction to help humans know of the infinite beyond their life and to assist them in expressing true benevolence through their passion. Having a passion to fight for life, that's what's so worthwhile about humanity. And that's why I have this channel, honestly. I would never have done this channel. Dr. N, humans also have a great capacity for malevolence. That's part of the passion, but it's evolving too. And when humans experience trouble, they can be at their best and are quite noble. Dr. N, perhaps it is the soul which fosters the positive characteristics you suggested? Subject, we try to enhance what's already there. Dr. N, does any soul ever go back to the world without ego after they have once been there and acquired identity? Subject, uncomfortable. Yes, but I don't want to get into that. Dr. N, it looks like I might have been mistaken on that one, huh? Dr. N, well, then we won't. But I have been told some souls do return if their conduct during physical assignments is consistently irregular. Right. I have the impressions they are considered defective and are returned to the factory for a kind of spiritual prefrontal lobotomy. Subject shakes his head with annoyance. I am offended by that description. Where did you get such a notion? Those souls who have developed severe obstacles to improvement are mended by the restoration of positive energy. Dr. N, is this procedure just for Earth souls? Subject, no. Young souls from everywhere may acquire restoration as a last resort. Dr. N, are these resorted spirits then allowed to return to their respective groups and eventually go back to incarnating on physical worlds? Subject sighs deeply. Yes. Dr. N, how would you compare the world without ego to the world of all-knowing? Subject, they are opposites. This world is not for young souls. Dr. N, have you been to the world of all-knowing? Subject, no, I'm not ready. I'm only aware of it as a place we strive for. Dr. N, what do you know about this spiritual area? Subject, long pause. It is a place of contemplation, the ultimate mental world of planning and design. I could tell you little about this sphere except that it is the final destination of all thought. The senses of all living things are coordinated here. Dr. N, then the world of all knowing is abstract in the highest form? Subject, yes, it's about blending content with form, the rational with ideals, and it is a dimension where the realization of all our hopes and dreams is possible. Dr. N, well, if you can't get there yet, how come you know about it? Subject, we get glimpses as an incentive to encourage us to make that final effort to finish our work and join the masters. The foundation of the spirit world is a place of knowing and has been alluded to under different names by clients. I am given only bare references to this universal absolute because even my advanced subjects have no direct experience there. All souls are anxious to reach and be absorbed by this nucleus, especially as they draw closer and are enticed by what little they can see. I'm afraid the world of all knowing can only be fully understood by non-reincarnating soul above level 5. Let's see here. 10:46. Okay, sorry. Dr. N, if the world without ego and the world of all-knowing are at opposite ends of a soul's experience, then where does the world of altered time fall? Subject, this sphere is available to all souls because it represents their own physical world. In my case, it is Earth. Dr. N, oh, this must be the physical dimension you told me about? Subject, no, the sphere of Earth is only simulated for my use. Dr. N, then all souls in the spirit world wouldn't study the same simulated world? Subject, no, each of us studies our own geographical planet where we incarnate. They are physically real temporarily. I hope you guys are paying attention to this, because a lot of this is going to play itself out as well once I start to show you some of these older texts and what they're really trying to tell you versus what's on the page, because it's across the board, all over the place, and this is kind of what they're talking about. Anyways, continuing. Dr. N, and so you don't physically live on this simulated world which appears on Earth, you only use it? Oh, I see what this is. Okay, interesting. Oh, so it's kind of like well, actually, the whole thing seems like a big, one of those like Star Trek, the holodeck. Yes, that's right, for training purposes, Dr. N. Why do you call this sphere the world of altered time? Subject, because we can change time sequences to study specific events. Dr. N, what is the basic purpose of doing this? Subject, to improve my decisions for life. This study will make more discriminating and preparing me for the world of all-knowing. How interesting. Note, this subject frequently used the term quote unquote world to describe non physical spatial work areas. These regions can be tiny or indescribably large in relation to the soul and may involve different dimensions. I believe there are separate realities for different learning experiences outside the restrictions of time. The coexistence of past, present, and future time in spiritual settings suggested by this case will be explored further in the next two chapters with cases 23 and 25. If I'm not mistaken, those are pretty interesting as well. So continuing, Dr. N, we haven't talked about the world of creation and non-creation. This must be the three-dimensional physical world you spoke of earlier. Subject, yes, and we enjoy using it as well. Dr. N, is this world intended for use of all souls? Subject, no, it is not. I'm just starting to apply myself there. I'm considered a newcomer. Dr. N, well, before we get into that, I want to ask if this physical world is the same as Earth. Subject, no, it is a little different. It's larger and somewhat colder. There's less water, fewer oceans, but similar. Dr. N, is this planet further from its sun than Earth is from our sun? Subject, yes. Dr. N, if I could call this physical world Earth 2, since it seems to be geographically similar to the Earth we know, would it be near Earth 1 in the sky? Subject, no. Dr. N, where is Earth 2 in relation to Earth 1? Subject, pause. I can't tell you. Dr. N, is Earth 2 in our Milky Way galaxy? Subject, long pause. No, I think it's farther away. Dr. N, could I see the galaxy Earth 2 is located in with a telescope from my backyard? Subject, I would think so. Dr. N, would you say the galaxy containing this physical world is shaped like a spiral as our galaxy, or is it elliptical? How would it look in a telescope from a long way off? Subject, as a great extend, a chain with a troubled expression. I can't tell you more. Note, as an amateur stargazer who uses a large reflector telescope designed for deep sky objects, I am always inquisitive when a session takes an astronomical turn. Client responses to these kinds of questions usually fall short of my expectations. I am never sure if this is due to blocking by guides, or the subject's lack of a physical frame of reference between Earth and the rest of our universe. Dr. N, I throw out a leading question. I suppose you go to Earth 2 to reincarnate with some sort of intelligent being? Subject loudly, no, that's just what we don't want to do there. Dr. N, when do you go to Earth 2? Subject, between my lives on this Earth. Dr. N, why do you go to Earth 2? Subject, we go there to create and just enjoy ourselves as free spirits. Dr. N, you don't bother the inhabitants of Earth 2? Subject enthusiastically, there are no people. It's so peaceful. We roam among the forests and deserts and over oceans with no responsibilities. Dr. N, what is the highest form of life on Earth 2? Subject evasive, oh, small animals without much intelligence. Dr. N, do animals have souls? Subject, yes, all living things do, but they have very simple fragments of mind energy. Dr. N, and that's another important, it's another important sentence here, because that's going to come out over and over again in future videos. As your soul and that of your friends evolve from using lower forms of physical life on Earth, Earth 1 after your creation? Subject, we don't know for sure, but none of us think so. Dr. N, why not? Because intelligent energy is arranged by a precedence of life. Plants, insects, reptiles, each is in a family of souls. Dr. N, and all categories of living things are separated from each other? Subject, no, the Maker's energy joins the units of every living thing in existence. That's correct. Every single living thing in existence. So, when you guys are walking around, living your life, if you see every person and everything as being part of the whole, and being part of yourself, and being part of the same upward motion to going into the same area, if you come to that true realization, I challenge you to ever, I guarantee you will be less angry, less stressed, less everything, way more peaceful all the time. There are so many aspects of the benefits of coming to these realizations in life. I should do an entire video about that, just on my own experiences, so I can share that with you guys, because I think it's important too. Real life experience and sharing those things people can relate to that kind of stuff. Just like I shared my story about the vision that I saw. If you haven't listened to that, I would suggest checking that out as well. Continuing. Subject startled. Oh no, Dr. N. Oh wait, are you involved with this element of creation? Subject startled. Oh no, Dr. N. Well, who is selected to visit Earth too? Subject. Those of us who are connected with Earth come here. This is a vacation spot compared to Earth. Dr. N. Why? Subject. There is no fighting, bickering, or striving for supremacy. There is a pristine atmosphere, and all life is quiet. This place gives us an incentive to return to Earth and makes it more peaceful too. Kind of sounds like the description of something like the Garden of Eden. Pardon me, I need to take a sip. And after this chapter, I'm going to have to take about a 10-minute break. I'll just give you guys a heads up. So, continuing, Dr. N. Well, I do see how this I just said that. I do see how this Garden of Eden would allow you to rest and be carefree, but you also said you come here to create. Subject. Yes, we do. Dr. N. It is no accident then that souls from Earth come to a world that is so similar geographically. Subject. That's right. Dr. N. Do other souls who are not earthbound go to physical worlds which resemble those planets where they incarnate? Subject, yes, younger souls with simpler organisms do learn to create without any intelligent life around. Dr. N, go on. Subject, we can experiment with the creation and see it developing here. It's as if you were in a lab where you can form physical things from your energy. Dr. N, do these physical things resemble what you might see on Earth 1? Subject, yes, only on Earth. That's why I am here. Dr. N, start with your arrival on Earth 2 and explain to me what your soul does first. Subject balks at my question and then finally says, I'm not very good. Note, since this subject is experiencing resistance, I take a few minutes for reconditioning and end with the following quote: On the count of three, you will feel more relaxed about telling me what you and Itis consider appropriate for my knowledge. 1, 2, 3. I repeat my question. Subject: I look to see what I am supposed to make on the ground in front of me. Then I mold the objects in my mind and try and create the same thing with small doses of energy. The teachers assist us with control. I am supposed to see my mistakes and make corrections. Dr. N. Who are the teachers? Subject Itis and Mulkalfig Mulkav Mukavgil. There we go. So who are your teachers? Itis and Mukavgil. Subject's highly advanced guide. And there are other instructors around. I don't know them very well. Dr. N, try to be as clear as possible. What exactly are you doing? Subject, we form things. Dr. N, living things? Subject, I'm not ready for that yet. I experiment with the basic elements, hydrogen and oxygen to create planetary substance, rocks, air, water, keeping everything small. Dr. N, do you actually create the basic elements of a universe? Subject, no, I just use the elements available. Dr. N, in what way? Subject, I take the basic elements and charge them with impulses from my energy, and then they change, and they can change. This sounds just like what's not chemistry, but I can't remember the word right now. I'll remember it later. Dr. N, changing to what? Subject, simply, I'm good with rocks. Dr. N, how do you form rocks with your energy? Subject, oh, by learning to heat and cool dust to make it hard. Dr. N, do you make the minerals in the dust? Subject, they do that for you. The teachers give us that stuff, gas vapors for water making, and so on. Dr. N, I want to understand this clearly. Your work consists of learning to create causing heat, pressure, and cooling from your energy flow? Subject, that's about right, by altering our currents of energy radiation. Dr. N, so you don't actually produce the substance of rock and water in some chemical way? Subject, no, like I told you, my job is to transform things by mixing what I am given. I play with the frequency and dosages of my energy. It's tricky, but not too complicated. Dr. N, not complicated? I thought nature did those things. Subject laughs. Who do you think nature is? Dr. N, well, who creates the basic elements of your experiments, the primary substances of physical matter? Subject, the maker, and those creating on a grander scale than me. Dr. N, well, in a sense, you are creating inanimate objects such as rocks. Subject, it's more our trying to copy what we see in front of us, what we know, as an afterthought. I'm getting into plants, but I can't do them yet. Dr. N, and you start small, experimenting until you get better? Subject, that's right. We copy things and compare them against the originals so we can make larger models. Dr. N, this all sounds like souls playing as children in a sandbox with toys. Subject smiles. We are children. directing an energy flow resembling the sculpturing of clay. Dr. N, are the other members of this creative training class from your original cluster group? Subject, some are. Most come from all over the spirit world, but they have all incarnated on Earth. Subject, well, of course, some of us are better with certain things, but we help each other. The teachers come around and give us tips and advice on how to improve. But stops, Dr. N, but what? Subject sheepishly, if I'm clumsy and do a bad job, I disassemble some creations without showing them to IDIS. That's so funny. We do the same thing on Earth. I mean, there's so many aspects of this. It's just, it makes me laugh. It makes me smile every time. I don't know. I love this book. I've always loved this book. Dr. N, give me an example. Subject, plants, I don't apply my energy delicately enough to produce the proper chemical conversions. Dr. N, you are not good with formation of plant life? Subject, no, so I undo my abominations. Dr. N, is that what you mean by uncreation? Can you destroy energy? Subject, energy can't be destroyed, which is actually scientifically a fact. We resemble it and start over using different combinations. Dr. N, I don't see why the Creator needs your help in creating. Subject, for our benefit, we participate in these exercises so when our work is judged to be of quality, hopefully we can make real contributions to life. Interesting. Dr. N, if we are all working up the ladder of development as souls, Jacob's ladder, Netham, I am left with the impression the spirit world is one huge organizational pyramid with supreme authority of power at the top. Subject sighs, no, you're wrong. This is not a pyramid. We are all threads in the same long piece of fabric. We are all woven into it, which is what string theory, quantum string theory is about, by the way, guys. Dr. N, it's hard for me to visualize fabric when there are so many levels of competency for souls. Subject, think of it as a moving continuum rather than souls being in brackets of highs and lows. Dr. N, I always think of souls moving up in their existence. Subject, I know you do, but consider us moving across. Dr. N, give me something I can picture in my mind. Subject, if it's as if we are all part of a universal train on the flat track of existence. Most of the souls on Earth are in one car moving along the track. Dr. N, are all other souls in different cars? Subject, yes, but all on the same track. Dr. N, where are the conductors such as IDIS? Subject, they move back and forth between the connected cars, but sit closer to the engine. Dr. N, where is the engine? Subject, the maker? Up front, naturally. Dr. N, can you see the engine from your car? Subject laughs at me. No, but I can smell the smoke. I can feel the engine rumbling along and I can hear the motor. These are interesting. I like these analogies. They're great. Dr. N, it would be nice for all of us if all of us were closer to the engine. Subject, ultimately, we will be, which is awesome. Starian rule, I will make a comment right at the end of this chapter on your message here. I have found it is not necessarily for souls to go to physical worlds when they begin using their energy in life-creating training. Apparently, these exercises begin in group settings where souls find it easier to pool their energy with each other and their instructor. A subject explained the process this way. Quote, when I started my group formed a circle around Senwa guide. Collectively, we had to practice to harmonize our thoughts and fine-tune our ability to all focus on one thing with the same intensity. One time we were working on a tree leaf after Senwa demonstrated how it should appear in front of us. As we directed our beams of energy for texture, color, and shape, we kept messing up. We weren't unified, so a small part of the leaf did not have the proper veining and pigmentation. I am very serious and kind of perfectionist in my studies, but Nemi, the group jokester, was deliberately alternating his energy the wrong way to screw up the experiment for laughs, and because he was tired of the lesson. We finally got him to behave and completed the assignment. Unquote. From what I am able to determine, souls are expected to individually work with the forces of creation by the time they are solidly established in level 3. Exposure to plant photosynthesis takes place before student souls work up the organic scale of life. I am told that early creation training consists of souls learning relationships between substances to develop the ability of unifying their energy with different values in the elements. The formation of inanimate to animate objects from the simple to the complex is a long, slow process. Students are encouraged to create miniature planetary microhabitats for a given set of organisms which can adapt to certain environmental conditions. With practice comes improvement, but not until they approach level 5 do my clients begin to feel they might actually contribute to the development of living things. We will hear more about this with Case 23. Some souls seem to have a natural gift for working with energy in their creation classes. My cases indicate ability in creation assignments does not mean a soul is at the same level of advancement in all other areas of the spiritual curricula. A soul may be good technician in harnessing the forces of creation, but lack the subtle techniques of a competent guide. Perhaps this is why I have been given the impression that the highly advanced soul is allowed to specialize. In the previous chapter, I explained some benefits of soul solitude, and the last case gave us another example. Spiritual experience is not easily translated into human language. You could say that again. Case 22 talks about the world of altered time as a means of transient planetary study. To someone in trance, it is the timeless mental world that is true reality, while all else is an illusion created for various benefits. Other subjects at about the same level call the sphere the space of transformation, or simply, quote, rooms of recreation, unquote. Here, I'm told souls are able to meld their energy into animate and inanimate objects created for learning and pleasure. One subject said to me, quote, I think of what I want and it happens. I know I'm being assisted. We can be anything familiar to our past experiences. For instance, souls can become rocks to capture the essence of density, trees for serenity, water for flowing cohesiveness, butterflies for freedom and beauty, and whales for power and immensity. People deny these actions represent former earthly transmigrations. I have also learned souls may become amorphous with substance or texture and totally integrate into a particular feeling, such as compassion, to sharpen their sensitivity. Some subjects tell of being mystical. Some subjects tell of being mystical spirits of nature, including figures I associate with folklore, such as elves, giants, and mermaids. Personal contact with strange mythological beasts are mentioned as well. These accounts are so vivid it is hard for me to simply label them as metaphoric. Are the old folk tales of many races pure superstition or manifestation of shared souled experience? I have the sense that many of our legends are the sympathetic memories of souls carried from one another places. Sorry, let me go back. I have the sense that many of our legends are the sympathetic memories of souls carried from other places to Earth long ago. Now that is a fascinating paragraph, especially with the community of people that we have in this, you know, different community. Let's just say of alternative types of researchers. Fascinating. And I'm going to have to take a quick 10-minute break. But before I do, I want to read a comment here that I had in the chat. It's hard to believe there's only 4 watching and the views are so low. This should have millions of views. Fascinating book. I've watched hundreds of NDE, but none of them spoke in this place. And yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that if you really want to get into more of these types of stuff or more of these types of things, you know, there are a lot of people who are associated with the author and his style. And as a matter of fact, there are a lot of people out there who are doing these things as a practice. And where I live in Vermont, there is actually somebody who has a practice not too far away from me. I actually don't have any desire to go do this myself, but I can appreciate why people would have a desire to explore this part of their lives. And I will tell you guys the truth is one reason I definitely wanted to do this reading is because I had mentioned this before in other videos, especially in the one I did on the discourse of reincarnation in Christianity. I had mentioned this book, and I had quite a few people tell me they couldn't get into it, or they couldn't really the audiobook. They didn't like the audiobook, which is on YouTube and has been for years. And so I decided to do it. But also, I do know people who are going through some real terrible times in their life, and I wanted to be able to do this so I can share at least with some of them. And if you're listening right now, you know, I love you, and I just want you to know that you're not alone, and things are Much better than maybe you might think they are, my brother. So, anyways, I got to go put another log in the fire. I got to go quickly check on my chickens, use the restroom, and I will be back in about 10 minutes. And I will go ahead and put on a little music for the background. guys, we are back. Take the break screen off. Yeah, one more comment too, Starian rule, is that a lot of people have bought this book, and the Audible audiobook, the official one that you can find on YouTube, has quite a few views on it. I mean, it's not something that people don't know, but that's definitely something that is not, let's just say, spread widely across. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this, because this has so much to do. This book will have so much to intersect with, a lot of the videos I've already done, but so much of what's coming along as well. And that's why, for me, it's important that I wanted to do this, but for other reasons as well. It's great information. And let's see here. Let's get back to this. Let me take a quick sip before we start. Make sure everything is sounding good too. Let's see here. Yes. Yep. Okay. Okay, good. All right. So, the advanced soul, chapter 11. People who possess, we'll be here for about 45 minutes or an hour, probably just this chapter, and then I have to drop off, and then maybe I'll hop back on for another 2-hour block later on, after I eat some food and all that stuff. So, continuing, people who possess souls which are both old and highly advanced are scarce. Although I haven't had the opportunity to regress many blues in level 5, they are always stimulating to work with because of their comprehension and far-reaching spiritual consciousness. The fact is, a person whose maturity is this high doesn't seek out a regression therapist to resolve life plan conflicts. In most cases, level 5s are here as incarnated guides. Having mastered the fundamental issues most of us wrestle with daily, the advanced soul is more interested in making small refinements towards specific tasks. And that makes you wonder about all the various prophets and people in history, right? We may recognize them when they appear as public figures, such as Mother Teresa. However, it is more usual for the advanced soul to go about their good works in a quiet, unassuming manner, without displaying self-indulgence. I would agree with that. Their fulfillment comes from improving the lives of other people. They focus less on institutional matters and more on enhancing individual human values. Nevertheless, level 5s are also practical, and so they are likely to be found working in a cultural mainstream which allows them to influence people and events. And yeah, I mean, like I said earlier before I started this chapter, that's one of the big reasons I'm doing this book. I have been asked if most people who are sensitive, aesthetic, and particularly right-brained have advanced souls, since individuals with these characteristics often appear to be at odds with the wrongs of an imperfect world. I see no correlation here. Being emotional, appreciating beauty, or having extrasensory impressions, including psychic talent, does not necessarily denote an advanced soul. The mark of an advanced spirit is one who has patience with society and shows extraordinary coping skills, most prominent in their exceptional insight. This is not to say life has no karmic pitfalls for them, otherwise the level 5 probably wouldn't be here at all. They may be found in all walks of life, but are frequently in helping professions or combating social injustice in some fashion. The advanced soul radiates composure, kindness, and understanding towards others. Not being motivated by self-interest, they may disregard their own physical needs and live in reduced circumstances. Which sounds a lot like a yogi. The individual I have chosen to represent the level 5 soul. And also, let me just say this, what they're just talking about here. Not being motivated by self-interest, they may disregard their own physical needs and live in reduced circumstances. If you guys listen to the audiobook of the On the Contemplative Way by Philo of Alexandria, he talks about this group of people called the Therapeutae. And the Therapeutae are very much just like these people here. And he specifically says the Therapeutae have a different kind of healing. They heal people physically, but very specifically, they heal people's souls. And these group of people lived during the time period that Jesus Christ supposedly walked the earth. And the way that they lived, which is totally in that book that I read, is very similar to what this is explaining as far as higher souls here. So if you guys haven't listened to that, I would definitely put that on your bucket list and listen to it later. The individual I have chosen to represent the level 5 soul is a woman in her mid 30s who works for a large medical treatment facility specializing in chemical substance abuse. I was introduced to this woman by a colleague who told me of her skill in guiding recovering drug addicts into an improved state of self awareness. At our first meeting, I was struck by the woman's expression of serenity while surrounded by chaotic emergencies at her place of employment. She was tall and excessively thin, with flaming red hair which stuck out in all directions. Although warm and friendly, there was about her an air of impenetrability. Her clear, luminous eyes, gray eyes, were those of one who sees small things unnoticed by ordinary folk. I felt she was looking into rather than at me. My colleague suggested the three of us have lunch because this woman was interested in my studies of the spirit world. She told me that she never had been hypnotically regressed, but that there was a sense of a long spiritual genealogy through her own meditations. She thought our meeting was no accident on her own. Yeah. Uh, I'll get into that last sentence in a different context later. She thought our meeting was no accident on her own learning path, and we came to an agreement to explore her spiritual knowledge. A few weeks after she arrived at my office, clearly this woman had no compelling desire for a long chronology of her past life history. I decided to get a brief sketch of her earliest lives on Earth to use as a springboard into the superconscious memories. She rapidly entered into a deep trance and made instant contact with her inner self. Almost at once, I found this woman's span of incarnations staggering, going far back into the distant past of human life on Earth. Touching on her earliest memories, I came to the conclusion her first lives occurred at the beginning of the last warm interglacial period, which lasted from 130,000 to 70,000 years ago, before the last great ice age spread over the planet. During the warmer climate of the Middle Paleolithic period of Earth's history, my subject described living in moist subtropical savannas near hunting, fishing, and plant gathering areas. Later, some 50,000 years ago, when continental sheets of ice had again changed the Earth's climate, she spoke of living in caves and enduring bitter cold. Leaping rapidly over large blocks of time, I found her physical appearance changing from a slightly bent to a more erect posture. As we moved forward in time, I directed her to look into pools of water and feel her body while reporting back to me. Her sloping forehead became more vertical over thousands of years, and different bodies, suborbital ridges above the eyes, grew less pronounced, as did body hair and the massive jaws of archaic man. In her many lives as both men and women, I was given enough information on habitat, the use of fire, tools, clothes, and food, ritualistic tribal practices for rough anthropological dating. Paleontologists have estimated Homo erectus, an ape-like ancestor of modern humans, appeared at least 1.7 million years ago. Have souls been incarnating on Earth for this long, utilizing the bodies of these primitive bipeds we call hominids? A few of my more advanced clients declared that highly advanced souls who are specialized in seeking out suitable hosts for younger souls evaluate life on Earth for over 1 million years. My impression is that these examiner souls found the early hominid brain activity, a restricted voice box, to be inadequate for soul development earlier than some 200,000 years ago. Archaic Homo sapiens, whom we call humans, evolved several 100,000 years ago. Within the last 100,000 years, we find two clear signs of spiritual consciousness and communication. These are burial practices and ritualistic art, as found in carved totems and rock drawings. There is no anthropological evidence that these practices existed on Earth before Neanderthal peoples. Souls eventually made us human, not the reverse. Interesting. One of my advanced subject remarked, quote, souls have seeded the Earth in different cycles, unquote. A composite of information collected from a wide range of clients suggested to me that the land masses we know today deviate from earlier continents, drowned perhaps by cataclysmic volcanic or magnetic upheavals. For instance, the Azores and the Atlantic Ocean have been said to represent the tops of the mountains of the submerged continent of Atlantis. Indeed, I have had subjects discuss being in ancient lands on Earth that I cannot identify with modern geography. Now, that would be a whole nother set of books, wouldn't it? Yeah, I bet you somebody's probably done this, used this kind of, method of hypnotherapy and hypnosis to sort of go back and do that kind of thing. But at the same time, it's also interesting, too, is that the universe is made up of many, many, many seemingly countless dimensions that we all seem to occupy. So, who knows? Anyways, continuing. Thus, it is possible souls existed in bodies more advanced than Homo erectus, who died out about a quarter of a million years ago, with the fossilized evidence hidden from us today by geological change. However, this hypothesis means the physical evolution of humans was an up, down, up affair, which I think is unlikely. I now moved my subject into an African life around 9,000 years ago, which she said was an important milestone in her advancement. This was the last life she was to spend with her guide, Kumara. Kumara was an advanced soul herself at the time of this life, counseling a benevolent tribal chief as his influential wife. I tentatively located their land as highlands of Ethiopia, which would have been called Kush back in those days. Apparently, my subject had known Kumara in a number of earlier lives, covering thousands of years during Kumara's final incarnation on Earth. Their association in human form ended when my subject died, saving Kumara's life on a riverboat by throwing herself in front of an enemy spear. Full of love, Kumara still appears to this subject as a large woman with skin of polished mahogany excuse me, and a shock of white hair crowned by a headdress of feathers. She is practically nude except for a strip of animal hide around her ample middle. On Kumara's neck hangs a garish bunch of multicolored stones, which she sometimes jiggles in my subject's ears to get her attention during the dreams in the middle of the night. Kumara teaches by a technique of flashing symbolic memories of prior lessons already learned in the past lives. Whoa. I'm going to stop there for just a second and just reflect on the fact that the story of my vision, which, again, if you guys haven't heard it and you're willing to listen to it, this is exactly what happened to me, essentially, except for that I had flashes of someone else's memories basically beamed into my mind, or I should say, beamed out of my mind. And I saw a person's, like the span of a person's life and all these terrible things that had sort of happened to her over and over again. And, but either way, I'm not going to get into it. I did the video if you guys want to check it out. But that sentence just now that I just read is very much indicative of what I experienced, but with someone else's memories, not my own. Although, when you think about it in terms of the real truth of it all, all of our memories are your memories are my memories are your memories, and on it goes within that quantum level and the understanding the bigger picture here. Okay, so continuing. I glanced at my watch. There was no more time for background information if I was going to allow for exploration of this woman's afterlife experiences. I rapidly took her into superconsciousness, anticipating some interesting spiritual disclosures. She would not disappoint me. Case 23. Dr. N, what is your spiritual name? Subject, These. Or Thesi, or These, I'll just call it These. Dr. N, and your spiritual guide kept her African name of Kumara? Subject, for me, yes. Dr. N, what do you look like in the spirit world? Subject, a glowing fragment of light. Dr. N, what exactly is the color of your energy? Subject, sky blue. Dr. N, does your light have flecks of another color in it? Subject, pause. Some gold, not much. Dr. N, how about Kumara's energy color? Subject, it's violet. Dr. N, how does light and color identify the quality of a soul's spiritual attainment? Subject, the intensity of mental power increases with the darker phases of light. Dr. N, where does the light intensity of intelligent light energy originate from? Subject, the knowledge by which the energy of darker light is extended to us from the source. Our light is attached to the source. Dr. N, when you say source, you mean God? Subject, that word has been misused. Dr. N, how? Subject, by too much personalizing, which makes the source less than it is. That's exactly what I'm trying to express. So many of the videos, so many comments that I make. And what I was just talking about earlier about Buddhism, this is exactly why Buddhism does not make a huge emphasis on God. Because they view it as a distraction of why they're even incarnated. And understanding that, I have a lot more respect for Buddhism. I have had for years, because I've known that for years. But it's a mistake to say that Buddhists don't believe in a higher source. It's just not part of their system. Continuing, so subject, by not personalizing, which makes the source less than it is. Dr. N, what's wrong with us doing that? Subject, it takes the liberty of making the source too human. although we are all part of its oneness. Dr. N. Thies, I want you to reflect on the source as we talk about other aspects of soul life in the spirit world. Later, I will ask you more about this oneness. Now, let's go back to the energy manifestations of souls. Why do spirits display two black glowing cavities for eyes when not showing their human forms? It seems so spooky to me. Subject laughs and is more relaxed. That's how Earth legends of ghosts came about, from these memories. Our energy mass is not uniform. The eyes you speak of represent a more concentrated intensity of thought. Dr. N. Well, if the myths about ghosts are not so fanciful after all, then these black eye sockets must be useful extensions of their energy. Subject, rather than eyes, they are windows to old bodies and all the physical extensions of former selves. This blackness is a concentration of our presence. We communicate by absorbing the energy presence of each other. Interesting. And it's funny how, on Earth we say the eyes are the windows to the soul, right? Dr. N, when you return to the spirit world, do you have energy contact with other souls who may look like ghosts? Subject, yes. An appearance is a matter of individual preference. Of course, there is always a multitude of thought waves around me mingling with my returning energy, but I avoid too much contact. Dr. N, why? Subject, it is not necessary for me to make attachments here. I will be alone for a while to contemplate and sort out any mistakes from my last incarnation before talking to Kumara. Note, this statement is typical of advanced souls returning to the spirit world. Mentioned earlier in case 9, however, this soul is so advanced she will have no deliberations with her guide until much later and upon her request. And I would just like to say this too, guys. So, the theme of this book is all about working out our issues, right? You know, we as human beings have the capacity to reach spiritual levels while we're here to really quickly advance the progress of who we really are as souls. And I think learning some of this information and putting it into practice and into use and into your consciousness, because that's a big part of it, right? For me, I don't ever stop thinking about this stuff, which is one of the reasons why it really has created such a wonderfully peaceful and I don't know, like my life is so much better than it ever has been, and I only have that to thank for it, is this change in my own life. And a lot of the stuff that is talked about in this book are things that I had to learn the hard way. Fighting this book 20 years ago helped me to leapfrog over so many parts of myself because I was able to understand the bigger picture of life, not just for me, but for everybody else around me. And I'll talk about that in more personal videos, but this is an important thing that we all should think about and remember and keep in the back of our minds always, or tie a string to your finger, whatever it takes. Anyways, continuing. Dr. N, perhaps we should talk about older souls for a minute. Does Kumara incarnate on Earth anymore? Subject, no, she doesn't. Dr. N, do you know any others like Kumara who were here during the early times on Earth and who don't come back anymore? Subject cautiously, a few, yes. Many got on Earth early and got off before I came. Dr. N, did any stay? Subject, what do you mean? Dr. N, advanced souls who keep coming back to life on Earth when they could stay on, when they can stay in the spirit world. Subject, oh, you mean the sages? Dr. N, yes, the sages. Tell me about them. This is a new term for me, but I often pretend to know more than I do with advanced souls to elicit information. Subject, with admiration, they are the true watchers of the earth, to be here and keep watch over what is going on. Yeah, the watchers. Sounds very Enochian. Dr. N, as a highly advanced soul who continues to incarnate? Subject, yes. Dr. N, don't the sages get tired of still hanging around Earth? Subject, they choose to stay and help people directly because they are dedicated to Earth. Dr. N, where are these sages? Subject, wistfully, they live simple lives. I first came to know some of them thousands of years ago. Today it's hard to see them. They don't like cities much. Exactly. Doctor, and this is just like, they're talking about yogis and various other people like that, who really do live extremely simple lives. Many of them, one of the most famous ones for sure. Dr. N, are there many of them? Subject, no. They live in small communities or out in the open, in the deserts and mountains and simple dwellings. They wander about, too. Dr. N, how does one recognize them? Subject sighs. Most people don't. They are known as the oracles of truth in earlier times on Earth. Dr. N, I know this sounds pragmatic, but wouldn't these old, highly developed souls be more useful helping new humankind in positions of international leadership rather than being hermits? Subject, Who said they were hermits? They prefer to be with the common people who are most affected by the movers and the shakers. Ain't that the truth? Dr. N, what is the feeling one gets when meeting a sage on Earth? Subject, you feel a special presence. Their power of understanding and the advice they give you is so wise. They do live simply. Material things mean nothing to them. Dr. N, are you interested? And this is again another, reference to the therapeutae and the way they live, guys. Okay, just throwing it out there. Dr. N, are you interested in this sort of service, Thies? Subject, no, they are saints. I welcome the time when I can stop incarnating. Dr. N, perhaps the word sage could also be used to souls like Kumara or even with entities to whom she turns for knowledge. Subject, pause. No, they are different. They are beyond the sages. We call them the old ones. Note, I would place these beings beyond level 6. Dr. N, are there many old ones working with souls at Kumara's level and above? Subject, I don't think so, compared to the rest of us, but we feel their influence. Dr. N, what do you feel in their presence? Subject, pensive. A concentrated power of enlightenment and guidance. Dr. N, could the old ones be embodiments of the source itself? Subject, it is not for me to say, but I don't think so yet. They must be close to the source. The old ones represent the purest elements of thought engaging in the planning and arrangement of substances. Dr. N, could you clarify a bit more what you mean by these highly placed souls being so close to the source? Subject, vaguely. Only that they must be close to conjunction. Dr. N, does Kumara ever talk about these entities who help her? Subject, to me only a little. She aspires to be of them, as we all do. Dr. N, is she getting close to the old ones in knowledge? Subject, faintly, she approaches as I approach her. It is slow assimilating with the source because we are not complete. Once the duties of a guide are fully established for the advanced soul, it is necessary for these entities to juggle two balls. Besides completing their own unfinished business with continued, though less frequent, incarnation, they must also help others while in a discarnated state. Thies talks to me about this aspect of her soul life. Dr. N, when you are back in the spirit world and come out of your self-imposed isolation, what do you ordinarily do then? Subject, I join with members of my company. Dr. N, how many souls are in your company? Subject, 9. Dr. N, jumping to the next conclusion too quickly. Oh, so the 10 of you are a group of souls under the leadership of Kumara? Subject, no, they are my responsibility. Dr. N, then these 9 entities are students from whom you teach? Subject, you could say that. Dr. N, and they are all in one group cluster, which I assume is your company? Subject, no, my company is made up of 2 different groups. Dr. N, why is that? Subject, they're in different progressions, levels. Dr. N, and yet you are the spiritual teacher for all 9? Subject, I prefer to call myself a watcher. 3 of my company are also watchers. Dr. N, who are the other 6? Subject, matter-of-factly, people who don't watch. Dr. N, I want to clarify this using my terms, if you will. Thies, if you are a senior watcher, 3 of your company must be what I would call junior guides. Subject, yes, but the word senior and junior that portrays us as authoritarian, which we are not. Subject, Dr. N, my intention is not to denote rank. For me, it is just an easy identification of responsibility. Consider the word senior as meaning an advanced teacher. I would call Kumara a master teacher or possibly an educational director. Subject shrugs. That's okay, I suppose, as long as director doesn't mean dictator. Dr. N, it doesn't. Now, Thies, cast your mind to a place where you can see the energy colors of all your company. What do the 6 souls who are not watchers look like? Subject smiles. Dirty snowballs. Dr. N, if they are white in tone, what about the rest? Subject, pause. Well, 2 are rather yellowish. Dr. N, we are 1 short. What about the 9th member? Subject, that's Anras. He's doing quite well. Dr. N, describe his energy color. Subject, he is turning bluish, an excellent watcher. He will be leaving me soon. Dr. N, let's go to the opposite end of your company. What member are you most concerned about and why? Subject, Ojanowin. She has the conviction from many lives that love and trust only bring hurt. Man, I know so many people like this. Musing, she has fine qualities which I want to bring out, but this attitude is holding her back. Dr. N, Ojanowin is developing more slowly than the rest. Subject, protectively, don't misunderstand. I'm proud of her effort. She has great sensitivity and integrity, which I like. She just requires more of my attention. Dr. N, As a watcher teacher, what is the one quality which Enras has required which you want to see in a Ojaniwan? Subject, no hesitation, adaptability to change. And that right there is this is big. All right, this is huge. Dr. N, I am curious, in the 9 members of your company advance in a rather uniform way together under your teaching. Subject, that's totally unrealistic. Dr. N, why? Subject, because there are differences in character and integrity. Dr. N, well, if learning rates are different between souls because of character and integrity, how does this equate with the mental capabilities of the human brain a soul selects? Subject, it doesn't. It doesn't. I was speaking of motivation. On Earth, we use many variations of the physical brain in the course of our expansion. However, each soul is driven by its integrity. Dr. N, is this what you mean by a soul having character? Subject, yes. An intensity of desire is part of character. Dr. N, if character is the identity of a soul, where does desire come in? Subject, the drive to excel is internal to each soul, but this too can fluctuate between lives. Dr. N, so where does the soul's integrity fit into this? Subject, the extension of desire. Integrity is the desire to be honest about self and motives to such an extent that full awareness of the path to the source is possible. What an amazing, yet again, something I have repeated and have definitely said on many times, extensions, I just read that. But yeah, this is a major point here. I just wanted to highlight that. Dr. N, if all basic intelligent energy is the same, why are souls different in their character and integrity? Subject, because their experiences with physical life change them, and this is intentional. By that change, new ingredients are added to the collective intelligence of every single soul. Now, that's another big point here, too, guys, is that your life experience, and I've said this in a previous video, I have no idea which one, but if you look at your life as the events and the way that you deal with your life and how you deal with your emotions and your passions and all these things that make life what it is. How you progress spiritually doesn't just affect you. But this is a big part of why, in the process of self-realization, and understanding that you truly are a part of every single thing that you see, feel, and touch. It's one of those things where it does clear your perception on a much clearer path of progression. And the further one gets into this, the benefits of these things are wonderful, because it is an increase in love, it's an increase in patience, and an increase in understanding and empathy, because you can actually, in a very strange spiritual way, feel people's true pain and then have the intuition to be able to help them. Again, bringing up that video of my vision is a perfect example of this kind of thing happening to a human being. And again, if you haven't listened to that, I would suggest definitely checking it out. So continuing, Dr. N, if all basic intelligent energy is the same, why are souls different in their character and integrity? Because their experiences in physical life change them, and if this is intentional. By that change, new ingredients are added to the collective intelligence of every soul. Dr. N, and this is what incarnation on Earth is all about. Subject, incarnation is an important tool. Yes, some souls are driven more than others to expand and achieve their potential, but all of us will do so in the end. Being in many physical bodies in different settings expands the nature of our real self. Dr. N, and this sort of self-actualization of the soul is a soul identity is the purpose of life. Let me go back. And this sort of self-actualization of the soul identity is the purpose of life on our world, subject, on any world. And there it is, right here. The whole crux of this entire book, why do we have reincarnation? It's for the self-actualization of our soul identity, of knowing thyself, right? The famous temple of Delphi in Greece had 2 major things written on the top. It was know thyself and nothing in excess. And as you guys can see, these themes are here, presented in this book, in this whole idea of the spirit world. This is not a mistake. And this is another reason why I really wanted to read this, so I can take this information and plant a seed in the people's minds who are ready to hear this kind of stuff. Um, and I have no attachments. Going back to this whole thing about we probably should have more views on this. I'm on a small channel at the moment, but in the end, like I have no attachments to whether my work does really reach a large amount of people. I only care that it does reach the right people who really want to and are striving for this information, and they can actually help to change their lives. Because in that essence, and in my understanding of the universe and my life, that in and of itself will happen by itself. That's part of me trusting God, so to speak, or trusting that spiritual system to just do what it needs to do. And all I'm doing is interjecting these things in a way that I understand nature works. And so people will naturally come and who are wanting and who need and who are looking for information, they'll find me, they'll find my information, they'll find these books. But it's up to us to be able to share them without attachments to being able to like change the entire world and these other things, because it's the little things in life which are truly the end up becoming the big things in this within the context of spiritual reality. So continuing. Dr. N, well, if each soul is preoccupied with self, doesn't this explain why we have a world of self-centered people? Subject, no, you misinterpret. Fulfillment is not cultivating self or selfish means, but allowing for integration with others in life, which is what I was just saying. That also shows character and integrity. This is ethical conduct. Natural law, right? Dr. N, does Ojaniwin have less honesty than Enras? Subject, pause. I'm afraid she does engage in self-deception. Dr. N, I wonder how you can function effectively as a spiritual guide for the 9 members of your company and still incarnate on Earth to finish your own lessons. Subject, it used to affect my concentration to some extent, but now there is no conflict. Dr. N, do you have a separate soul energy to accomplish this? Subject, yes. This capacity of souls allows for the management of both. Being on Earth also permits me to directly assist a member of my company and help myself at the same time. Which is exactly what I was just saying. Dr. N, the idea that souls can divide themselves is not an easy thing for me to conceptualize. Subject, your use of the term divide is not quite accurate. Every part of us is still whole. And remember this, guys. This is important. I'm only saying it does take some getting used to at first, since you manage more than one program at a time. Dr. N, so your effectiveness as a teacher is not diminished by having multiple activities? Subject, not in the least. Dr. N, would you consider the major thrust of your instruction to be on Earth with your human body or in spirit world as free entity? Subject, they are 2 different settings. My instruction is diversified but no less effective. Dr. N, but your approach to a company member would be different depending on the setting. Subject, yes it would. Dr. N, wouldn't you say the spirit world is the main center for learning? Subject, it is a center for evaluation and analysis, but souls do rest. Dr. N, when your students are living on Earth, do they know you are their guide and are there with them always? Subject laughs, some more than others, but they all sense my influence at one time or another. Dr. N, Thies, you are on Earth with me right now as a woman. Are you also able to be in contact with members of your company? Subject, I told you, yes. Dr. N, what I'm getting at is this. Isn't teaching by example difficult when your Earth visits are rather infrequent these days? Subject, if I came too often and worked with them directly as one human being to another, I would be interfering with their natural unfolding. That's a very good point. Dr. N, do you have the same reservations about interference as a teacher operating from the spirit world in a discarnate state? Subject, yes I do, although the techniques are different. Dr. N, for mental contact? Subject, yes. Dr. N, I would like to know more about the ability of spiritual teachers to contact their students. What exactly do you do from the spirit world to comfort or advise one of the 9 company members on Earth? Subject, no answer. Dr. N, coaxing her, do you know what I am asking? How do you implant ideas? Subject, finally, I am unable to tell you. Note, I suspect blocking here, but I can't complain. So far, Thies has been liberal with information, and so has her guide. I decided to stop the session for a minute to appeal directly to Kumara. It is a speech I have given before. Dr. N, Kumara, permit me to reason with you through Thies. My work here is intended for good. My questioning your disciple, I wish to add to my knowledge of healing and bring people closer to the higher creative power available within themselves. My larger mission is to combat the fear of death by offering people understanding about the nature of their souls and the spiritual home. Will you aid me in this endeavor? And I can tell you now that not long after I read this book originally, you guys, my fear of death slowly just slipped away. And I honestly can tell you that I don't fear death. I might fear how I die. You know what I mean? A big Mack truck runs me down or something like that. That might be, a little disconcerting, but I don't fear what happens afterwards. And one other thing that's really was a comforting thought, not just in this book, and so many other things that taught me that hell is not real, and the hell is really just our incarnated lives, because this is where all the suffering really happens. And that is one heck of a comforting conclusion, or let's just say realization. Because if you ain't worrying about going to hell, then it changes the way you look at the entire life, spirituality, the whole nine yards. And on top of that, it also makes you realize that the use of this whole idea of hell is terrible and evil in a lot of ways. And it's used as a control method, and not at all to help people break out of their problems or do any or to lift their spirits up or their souls. It's just to scare the living crap out of them, so that they will obey. And I know many of you would probably agree with me on that, and maybe many of you who are still very, I don't know, many of you who are very connected to this idea of hell and Satan and things like that may disagree, and that is just fine. There's no problem with that at all on my end. So just respect. Continuing, subject, after he asked Kumara, pleaded with Kumara, these answers me in an odd tone of voice. We know who you are. Dr. N, then would you both assist me? Subject, we will talk to you at our discretion. No, this tells me if I exceed the undefined boundary of these two guides with an intrusive question, it won't be answered. Dr. N, all right, Thies. On the count of 3, you will be more comfortable talking to me about how souls functions as guides. Begin by telling me what way a company member on Earth can signal to get your attention. 1, 2, 3. I snap my fingers for added effect. Subject, after a long pause. First, they have to claim, excuse me. First, they have to, listen to this, guys, calm their minds and focus attention away from their immediate surroundings. So, meditation. Dr. N, how would they do this? Yet again, subject, by silence, reaching inwards to fasten on their inner voice. Again, there's no reason why Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is within you, okay? There's a lot of this great stuff in these books that were just paved over with a bunch of just nonsense and narrative and storytelling. But the truth is it's in there. Just one needs to know how to dig the mines for those diamonds and to be able to recognize those diamonds in the rough. Because a diamond looks like a piece of coal until you clean it off. So, continuing, how do they do this? By silence, reaching inward to fasten on their inner voice. Dr. N, is this how one calls for spiritual help? Subject, yes, at least to me. They must expand upon their inner consciousness to engage me on a central thought. And that's another important thing, guys. When one does meditate, it's very important. And I'm going to do more videos on meditation for a lot of people who are completely, have no background in this whatsoever. I think it's going to be important for me to help at least lay out some generalizations to help people, get started on it. Because it is interesting. When I first started to do meditation, it was through the rosary. And the rosary is set up to where every day you have different themes, and in each day you have, I think it's 4 or 5 themes for each 10 beads. The sections, 10 bead sections that you do, and each one of these has a central thought in which you, as you're doing your prayers, that thought is central in your mind. And the deeper you go into it, the more your mind starts to act on that thought, and then your mind will literally play itself scenes from your life, which have associations with these thoughts themselves. It's a very good way of being able to work out your past issues in your present state. Just wanted to stop and make that distinction. Dr. N, on you. Okay, so yes, at least to me, they must expand upon their inner consciousness to engage me on a central thought. Dr. N, on you, or the specific problem which is bothering them. Subject, they must reach out beyond what is troubling them in order to be receptive to me. That's difficult when they don't remain calm. And that's another reason why you have to meditate and calm your mind. Dr. N, do all 9 company members have about the same abilities to reach you for help? Subject, no, they don't. Dr. N, perhaps Ojanowen has the most problems? Subject, she's one of those that does. Dr. N, why? For me, getting the signals is easy. It's harder for people on Earth. The energy of the directed thought must override human emotion. Dr. N, within a spirit world framework, how do you pick up the messages of just your company out of billions of souls who are sending out distress signals to other guides? Subject, I know instantly. All watchers do because people send out their own individual patterns of thought. Dr. N, like a vibrational code in a field of thought particles? Subject, laughing. You could describe an energy pattern that way, I guess. Dr. N, okay, then how would you reach back to someone in need of guidance? Subject grins by whispering answers into their ear. Dr. N, lightly, is that what a friendly spirit does with a troubled mind on Earth? Subject, it depends. Dr. N, on what? Are teacher spirits rather indifferent with the day-to-day problems of humans? Subject, not indifferent, or we wouldn't communicate. We gauge each situation. We know life is transitory. We are more detached because without human bodies, we are unencumbered by the immediacy of human emotion. And I'm just going to let you know that this concept that this person is talking about is absolutely available to people on this planet if you work towards it. Having a loving detachment from what all the things that go around will, and this takes just years of practice and meditation and self-realization, but it opens up that intuitional eye of yours in a way that is just amazing. It will never stop. I mean, it'll continuously amaze you your whole life, because once you open it up, you can't shut it down again. That's one of the nice things about it too. So, continuing, Dr. N. But when the situation does call for a spiritual guidance, what do you do? Subject gravely, as watchers in the stillness, we recognize the amount of turbulence from the wake of troubled thought. Then we carefully merge with it, and gently touch the mind. Dr. N. Please describe this connection process further. Subject. Pause. It's a slipstream of thought, which is usually turbulent rather than smooth, from someone in distress. I was awkward at first, and I still don't have Kumara's skill. One must enter with subtlety to wait for the best receptivity. Dr. N. How can a watcher be awkward? You have had thousands of years of experience. Subject. Communicators not all the same. Watchers too have a variety of abilities. If one of my company is in a crisis, physically hurt, sad, anxious, resentful, they send out great amounts of uncontrolled negative energy which alerts me, but exhausts them. This is the challenge of a watcher, to know when and how to communicate. When people want immediate relief, they may not be in the proper mode for reflection. Dr. N, when in terms of abilities, can you tell me how you were awkward as an experienced guide? Subject, I wanted to rush in too fast to help without coordinating the patterns of thought we talked about. People can go numb. You don't get through to them when they have intense grief, for example. You are shut out of a cluttered mind when attentions are distracted and thought energy is scattered all about. Dr. N, do the 9 members of your company sense your intrusion into their minds following a cry to you for help? Subject, watchers are not supposed to intrude. It's more of a soft coupling. I implant ideas which they assume is inspiration to try and give them peace. Dr. N, what single thing do you have the most problem with during communications with people on Earth? Subject, fear. Dr. N, would you enlarge on that? Subject, I have to be careful not to spoil my people by making life too easy for them, to let them work out most of their difficulties without jumping right in. They only suffer more if a watcher moves in too quickly before this is done. Kumara is an expert at this. Dr. N, is she ultimately responsible for you and your company? Subject, well, yes, we are all under her influence. Dr. N, do you ever see any of your own peer members around? I'm thinking of associates at your level of attainment with whom you can confer about teaching methods. Subject, oh, you mean those I grew up with here? Dr. N, yes. Subject, 3 in particular, yes. Dr. N, and they do lead company groups themselves? Subject, yes. Dr. N, are these more advanced souls responsible for about the same number of souls as you? Subject, yes, except Waru. His company is more than double my own. He is good. Another company is being added to his workload. Dr. N, how many superior entities do you and your friends who are company leaders go go to for advice and direction. Subjects. We all go to Kumara to exchange observations and seek ways of improvement. Dr. N. How many souls like you and Waru does Kumara oversee? Subject. Oh, I couldn't know that. Dr. N. Try and give me an estimate of the number. Subject after reflection, at least 50, probably more. Additional inquiries into Kumara's spiritual activities were fruitless, so I turned next to thesis creation training. Her experiences, which I have condensed, take us a little further than those training exercises described by Nentham in the last chapter. To those readers with a scientific bent, I want to stress that when a subject is reporting to me about creation, their frame of reference is really not grounded in earth science. I have to make the best interpretations I can from the information provided. Dr. N, the curriculum for souls seem to have great variety. These. I want to go into another aspect of your training. Does your energy utilize the properties of light, heat, and motion in the creation of life? Subject, startled. You know about that? Dr. N, what more can you tell me? Subject, only that I am familiar with this. Dr. N, I don't want to talk about anything which will make you uncomfortable, but I would appreciate your confirmation of certain biological effects resulting from the actions of souls. Subject hesitates. Oh, I don't think, Dr. N, I jump in quickly. What creation have you recently done which makes Kumara proud of you? Subject without resistance. I'm proficient with fish. Dr. N, I follow up with deliberate exaggeration to keep her going. Oh, so you can create a whole fish with your mental energy? Subject vexed. You must be kidding. Dr. N, then where do you start? Subject, with the embryos, of course. I thought you knew. Dr. N, just checking. When do you think you will be ready for mammals? Subject, no answer. Dr. N, look, Thies, if you will try to cooperate with me for a few more minutes, I promise to not to take long with my questions on this subject. Would you agree to that? Subject, pause. We will see. Excuse me. Dr. N, okay, as a means of basic clarification, tell me what you actually do with your energy to develop life to the stage of fish. Subject, reluctantly, we give instructions to organisms within the surrounding conditions. Dr. N, do you do this on one world or many in your training? Subject, more than one. Would not elaborate except to say that these planets were, quote, Earth types, unquote. Dr. N, and what kind of environment are you working on now? Subject, oceans. Dr. N, with basic sea life such as algae and plankton. Subject, when I started. Dr. N, when you mean before you worked up to the embryos of fish. Subject, yes. Dr. N, then when souls start to create forms of life, they begin with microorganisms? Subject, small cells, yes, and this is very difficult to learn. Dr. N, why? Subject, the cells of life, our energy, cannot become proficient unless we can direct it to alter molecules. Dr. N, then you are actually producing new chemical compounds by mixing basic molecular elements of life by your energy flow? Subject nods. Dr. N, can you be more explicit? Subject, no, I can't. Subject, or Dr. N, can we, let me try and sum it up, and please tell me if I am on the wrong track. A soul who becomes proficient with actually creating life must be able to split cells and give DNA instructions. And you do this by sending particles of energy into protoplasm? Subject, we must learn to do this. Yes, coordinating it with a sun's energy. Dr. N, why? Subject, because each sun has different energy effects on the worlds around them. Oh, how about that? This is even scientifically something that, as you know, in the science world, spoken about as well. Dr. N, then why would you interfere with what a sun would naturally do with its own energy on the planet? Subject, it's not interference. We examine new structures, mutations, to watch and see what is workable. We arrange substances for their most effective use with different suns. Dr. N, when a species of life evolves on a planet, are the environmental conditions for selection and adaptation natural, or are intelligent soul minds tinkering with what happens? Subject, evasively. Usually a planet hospitable to life has souls watching, and whatever we do is natural. Dr. N, how could souls match and influence biological properties of growth evolving over millions of years on a primordial world? Subject, time is not in Earth years for us. We use it to suit our experiments. Dr. N, do you personally create suns in our universe? Subject, a full-scale sun? Oh no, that's way over my head and requires the powers of many. I generate only on a small scale. Dr. N, what can you generate? Subject, small bundles of lightly concentrated matter, heated. Dr. N, but what does your work look like when you are finished? Subject, small solar systems. Dr. N, are your miniature suns and planets the size of rocks, buildings, and moons? Moon? What are we talking about here? Subject laughs. My suns are the size of basketballs and the planets marbles. That's the best I can do. Dr. N, why do you do this on a small scale? Subject, for practice, so I can make larger suns. After enough compression, the atoms explode and condense. But I can't do anything really big alone. Dr. N, what do you mean? We must learn to work together to combine our energies for the best results. Dr. N, well, who does the full-size thermonuclear explosions which create physical universes in space itself? Subject, the source, the concentrated energy of the old ones. I'm going to take a quick sip here. Dr. N, oh, so the source has help? Subject, I think so. Dr. N, why is your energy striving to create universal matter in more complex life when Kumara and the entities above her are already proficient? Subject, we are expecting to join them just as they wish to unite their accomplished energy with the old ones. Okay, so, wow, this is a long chapter. I meant to be done 6 minutes ago. Continuing, creation questions always evoke the issue of first cause. When the exploding interstellar mass which caused the birth of our stars and planets an accident of nature or planned by intelligent force. When I listen to subjects such as these, I ask myself why souls would be practicing the chain reactions of energy matter with models on a scale if they were not intended to make larger celestial bodies. I have had no subjects in level 6 and above to substantiate how they might carry the forces of creation further. It would seem if souls do progress, then entities at this level could be expected to evolve themselves with the birthing of planets and the development of life forms capable of higher intelligence suitable for soul use. After pondering why less than perfect souls are associated with creation at all, I came to the following conclusions. All souls are given the opportunities to participate in the development of lower forms of intelligent life in order to advance themselves. This principle could also be applied to the reason why souls incarnate in physical form. Thies suggested that the supreme intelligence she calls the source is made up of a combination of creators, the old ones, who fuse their energy to spawn universes. The thought has been expressed to me in different ways by other subjects when they describe the combined power of non-reincarnating old souls. And this whole idea, too, is similar because like this whole idea of the Elohim in the Hebrew Bible, which is often spelled as plural, or this idea of gods, demigods under the main gods, or main god, I should say, is fascinating. And this is definitely something that's going to pop up, in future studies on this channel. So I'm glad to see it mentioned here in this context, which is pretty fascinating to me. This concept is not new. There we go. I should have just kept reading, right? For instance, the idea we have no single godhead is a philosophy of the Jainist sect in India. The Jains believe fully perfected souls called siddhas are a group of universal creators. These souls are fully liberated from further transmigrations. Below them are the arhat souls, advanced illuminators, who still incarnate along with 3 more lower gradations of evolving souls. To the jams, reality is uncreated and eternal. Thus, the siddhas need no creator. Most Eastern philosophies deny this tenet of Jainism in favor of a divine board of directors created by a chairman. This conclusion is more palatable to the Western mind as well. And that's right. But here's the thing: it's like, they say that they don't need no creator because, again, the karmic work that one has to do doesn't require the fact that you give reverence to the creator, because in doing the work you are giving reverence in the creator because you are part of that. So this is why a lot of these Eastern religions don't have an emphasis on these kinds of things. But it doesn't mean that in the end they don't recognize then the full absorption, and that they just don't call it by what Western people call it, or even Western ideas. It's extremely important to conceptualize that idea in one's mind, especially if you're following me on this channel, because I'm going to be diving into a lot of this stuff soon, but I wanted to give this book as a sort of backdrop to some more information. Continuing, with certain subjects, it is possible to pursue a wide range of topics in condensed periods. Earlier, Thies had alluded to intelligent life existing on other worlds when she talked about a soul's cosmic training. This brings up another aspect about soul life which has been hard for some of us to accept. A small percentage of my subjects, usually the older advanced souls, are able to recall being in strange, non human, intelligent life forms on other worlds. Their memories are rather fleeting and clouded about the circumstances of these lives, the physical details and planetary location relative to our universe. I wonder if Thies had any such experiences long ago, so I open up this line of inquiry for a few minutes to see where it might lead. Dr. N. A while back, you remarked about your physical worlds besides Earth, which are available to souls. Subject, hesitant, yes. Dr. N, casually, and I assume some of these planets support intelligent life, which are useful to souls wishing to incarnate? Subject, that's true. There are many schoolyards. Dr. N, do you ever talk to other souls about their planetary schoolyards? Subject, long pause. It's not my inclination to do so. I'm not attracted to them, the other schools. Dr. N, perhaps you could give me some idea of what they are like. Subject, oh, some are analytical schools. Others are basically mental worlds, subtle places. Dr. N, what do you think of the Earth school by comparison? Subject, the Earth school is insecure. Still, it is filled with resentment of many people over being led and antagonism of the leaders towards each other. Not a true statement, if ever there was one, especially today. There is so much fear to be overcome here. It is a world in conflict because there is too much diversity among too many people. Other worlds have low populations with more harmony. Earth's population has outpaced its mental development. Dr. N, would you rather be training on another planet then? Subject, no. For all Earth's quarreling and cruelty, there is passion and bravery here. I like working in crisis situations to bring order out of disorder. We all know Earth is a difficult school. Dr. N, so the human body is not an easy host for souls? Subject, there are easier life forms who are less in conflict with themselves. Dr. N, well, how would you know this unless your soul has been in another life form? After I have provided this subtle opening, Thies began talking about being a small flying creature in an alien environment on a dying world where it was hard to breathe. From her descriptions, the sun on this planet was apparently going into nova stage. Her words were halting and came in short, rapid breaths. Thies said she lived on this world in a humid jungle with a night sky so densely packed with stars there were no dark lanes in between them. This gave me the impression she was located near the center of the galaxy, perhaps our own. She also said her brief time on this world was spent as a very young soul, and Kumara was her mentor. After the world could no longer support life, they had come to Earth to continue working together. I was told there was a kinship in the mental evolution of life on Earth and that she had experienced before. This flying race of people began afraid, isolated, and dangerous to each other. Also, like Earth, family alliances were important, representing expressions of loyalty and devotion. While I was concluding this line of questioning, there was a further development. Dr. N, do you think there are other souls on Earth who have had physical lives on this now dead world? Subject paused, then unable to restrain herself. Actually, I have met one. Dr. N, under what circumstances? Subject laughs. I met a man at a party a while ago. He recognized me, not physically, but with the mind. It was an odd meeting. I was caught off balance when he came up to me and shook my hand. I thought he was pushy when he said he knew me. Dr. N, then what happened? Subject softly. I was in a daze, which is unusual for me. I knew there was something between us. I thought it was sexual. Now I can see all clearly. It was Ikak. Excuse me, I have to take a sip. This name is spoken with a clacking noise from the back of her throat. He told me we were once together from a place far away and there were a couple of others here. Dr. N, did he say anything more about them? Subject faintly, no. I wonder, I ought to know them. Dr. N, did Ikak say anything about your former physical relationship on this world? Subject, no. He saw I was confused. I didn't know what he was talking about then anyway. Dr. N, how could he consciously know about this planet when you didn't? Subject, puzzled. He is ahead of me. He knows Kumara, then more to herself than me. What is he doing here? Dr. N, why don't you finish telling me about him at the party? Subject laughs again. I thought he was just trying to pick me up. It was awkward because I was drawn to him. He said I was very attractive, which is something men don't usually say to me. There were flashes in my mind that we had been together before, as fragments in a dream sequence. Dr. N, how did your conversation end with this man? Subject, he saw my discomfort. I guess he thought it was best to have no further contact because I haven't seen him since. I thought about him though, and maybe we will see each other again. And, wow, this chapter is so long. Excuse me. throat. Okay. I believe souls do come across time and space for each other. Recently, I had two subjects who were best friends and came to meet me at the same time for regression. Not only had they been soulmates in many former lives on Earth, but were also mated as fish like, intelligent beings in a beautiful water world. Both recalled the enjoyment of playing underwater with their strong appendages and coming to the surface, quote, to peak, unquote. Neither subject could recall much about this planet or what happened to their race of creatures. Perhaps they were part of a failed Earth experiment long before a land mammal developed into the most promising species on Earth for souls. I suspect it was not Earth because I have had others tell me who tell of living in an aquatic environment they know was unearthly. One of these subjects said, quote, "My water world was very warm and clear because we had 3 suns overhead. The total lack of darkness underwater was comforting and made building our dwellings much easier," unquote. I have often wondered if the dreams we have at night about flying, breathing underwater, and performing other non-human physical feats relate to our earlier physical experiences in other environments. In the early days of my studies of souls, I have half expected that those subjects who could recall other worlds would say they had lived in our galaxy within the neighborhood of the sun. This assumption was naive. Earth is in a sparse section of the Milky Way with only 8 stars that are 10 light years away from the sun. We know our own galaxy has more than 200 billion stars within a universal current speculated at 100 billion galaxies. It's way bigger than that now. Consider if only a small fraction of 1% of the stars in our galaxy had planets with intelligent life useful to souls, the number would still be in the millions. From what I can gather from subjects willing and able to discuss former assignments, souls are sent to any world with suitable intelligent life forms. Out of all the stars which are known to us, only 4% are like our sun. Apparently, this means nothing to souls. Their planetary incarnations are not linked to Earth-type worlds or with intelligent bipeds who walk on land. Souls who have been to other worlds tell me they have a fondness for certain ones and return to them, like Earth, periodically for succession of lives. I have not had many subjects who are able to recall specific details about living on other worlds. This may be due to lack of experience, a suppression of memory, or blocks imposed by master guides to avoid any discomfort from flashbacks in non-earthly bodies. Those subjects who are able to discuss their experiences on other worlds tell me that before coming to Earth, souls are frequently placed in the bodies of creatures with less intelligence than human beings, unlike Thesis' case. However, once in a human body, souls are not sent back down the mental evolutionary ladder. Yet, physical contrasts can be stark, and side trips away from Earth are not necessarily pleasant. One mid-level client of mine expressed it in this way, quote, "After a long series of human lives, I told my guide I needed a break from Earth for a while in another kind of environment. He warned me, quote, 'You may not like this change right now because you have become so accustomed to the attributes of the human mind and body,' unquote. And then, quote, my client persisted, sorry, not quote, my client persisted and was duly given life on what was described as a, quote, pastel world living among a race of small, thickly set beings. They were a thoughtful bunch, but somber people with tiny chalk-white faces which never smiled. Without human laughter and physical flexibility, I was out of sync and made little progress. The assignment must have been particularly difficult for this individual when we consider that humor and laughter is such a hallmark of soul life in the spirit world." I was now approaching the final phase of my session with Case 23. It was necessary to apply additional deepening techniques because I wanted Thies to reach into the highest recesses of her superconscious mind to talk with me about space-time and the source. Dr. N. Thies, we are coming to the end of our time together, and I want you to turn your mind once again to the source creator. Pause. Will you do that for me? Subject, yes, Dr. N. You said that the ultimate object of souls was to seek unification with the supreme source of energy, of creative energy. Do you remember? Subject, the act of conjunction, yes, Dr. N. Tell me, does the source dwell in some special central place in the spirit world? Subject, the source is the spirit world. The ever-pervading God. Dr. N. Then who do souls speak of reaching a core of spiritual life? Oh, I'm sorry. Then why do souls speak of reaching a core of spiritual life? Subject, when we are young spirits, we sense power around us everywhere, and we see, and yet we feel we are on the edge of it. As we grow older, there is an awareness of a concentrated power, but it is the same feeling. That's fascinating as well, you guys, because the really ancient depiction of the One in Egypt is the big round circle, is the globe, the winged globe. But if you notice, it's always a big circle with a dot in the middle. The dot represents that oneness. Everything in part of the circle is encompassed in that oneness. And so, as this soul talks about um, being sort of outside of that, like on the edge, you know. And as they grow older, there's an awareness of a concentrated power, but it is the same feeling. It just becomes more intense. And that is another thing that can happen if one practices meditation with the right intention and, that kind of thing. You can very much get the same type of effect. So, continuing. So that's what I mean. Like the goals between the spirit world and our planetary physical world are essentially the same, guys. And so if we can make ourselves think more in terms of the bigger picture and meld those two together, then we can really go far as people. Not just as your own person, but like I said before, the more you progress as a soul personally, the more you do for every other soul in the entire universe. And that seems to be the law of the universe, according to the way that this book is kind of laying this out. So, you're not nothing in this life. You're actually extremely important. Okay, and don't let anyone ever tell you otherwise. Continuing, even though you have called this place of the old ones. Oh, sorry. Okay, so as we go older, yep, there is an awareness of concentrated power, but it is the same feeling. Dr. N, even though you have called this the place of the old ones. Subject, yes, they are part of the concentrated power of the source which sustains us as souls. Dr. N, well, lumping this power together as one energy source, can you describe the Creator in a more human terms? Subject, as the ultimate selfless being which we strive to be. Dr. N, if the source represents all the spirit world, how does this mental place differ from physical universes with stars, planets, and living things? Subject, universes are created to live and die for the use of the source. This place, the place of spirits, is the source. Dr. N, we seem to live in a universe which is expanding and may contract again and eventually die, since we live in a space with time limitations. How can the spirit world itself be timeless? Subject, because we live in non-space, which is timeless, except in certain zones. Dr. N, please explain what these zones are. Subject, they are interconnecting doors opening for us to pass through in a physical universe of time. Dr. N, how can time doors exist in non-space? Subject, the opening exists as thresholds between realities. Dr. N, well, if the spirit world is non-dimensional, what kind of reality is that? Subject, a constant reality state, as opposed to the shifting realities of dimensional worlds, which are material and changing. Where are I? There we are. Dr. N, do past, present, and future have any relevance for souls living in the spirit world? Subject. Where did I just lose? Oh, I keep scrolling the wrong way. Sorry, guys. Subject, only as a means of understanding succession in physical form. Living here, there, is a changelessness. For those of us not crossing thresholds into a universe of substance and time. Note, a major application of time thresholds used by souls will be examined in an upcoming chapter on life selection. Dr. N, you speak of universe in the plural. Are these other physical universes besides the one which contains Earth? Subject, vaguely, there are differing realities to suit the source. Dr. N, are you saying souls can enter various forms of different physical realities from spiritual doorways? Subject nods. Yes, they can and do. Before concluding the session with the highly advanced subject, I should add that most people who are in deep hypnosis are able to see beyond an earth reality of three-dimensional space into the alternate realities of timelessness. In the subconscious state, my subjects experience a chronology of time with their past and present lives which resembles what they perceive when conscious. There is a change when I take them into superconsciousness and the spirit world. Here they see the now of time as one homogeneous unit of past, present, and future. Seconds in the spirit world seem to represent years on earth. When their sessions are over, clients will often express surprise at how time in the spirit world is unified. Quantum mechanics is a modern branch of physics which investigates all subatomic movements in terms of electromagnetic energy levels, where all things in life are thought to be ultimately non solid and existing in a unified field. Going beyond Newton's physical laws of gravity, the elements of action on time are also are also considered to be unified by light, wave frequency, and kinetic energy. Since I show that souls do experience feelings of the past of time in a chronological fashion in the spirit world, doesn't this contradict the concept of oneness for past, present, and future? No, it does not. My research indicates to me that the illusion of time progression is created and sustained for those souls coming to and from physical dimensions who are used to such biological responses as aging, so they may more easily gauge their advancement. Thus, it makes sense to me that when the quantum physicists hypothesize that time, rather than being an absolute of three phases, is only an expression of change. And by the way, I'm going to be bringing quantum physics and some of the just basic elements that I can show you guys to show you that the science itself backs a lot of this stuff up. Which is just wild, honestly. But that'll be an interesting set of videos. So anyway, continuing, when my subject speaks of traveling as souls on lines which curve, I think of the space-time theories of those astrophysicists who believe light and motion are a union of time and space curving back on itself. They say if space is bent severely enough, time stops. Indeed, when listening to my clients talk about time zones and tunnels of passages into different dimensions, I think about the similarities here to current astronomical theories of physical space being warped, twisted, or into cosmic loops, creating, quote, mouths, unquote, of hyperspace, and black holes which may lead out of our three-dimensional universe. Perhaps the space-time concepts of astrophysics and metaphysics are edging closer together, and I would absolutely say at this point they absolutely are. I have suggested to my subjects that if the spirit world seems round to them and appears to curve when they travel rapidly as souls, this could represent a finite enclosed sphere. They deny the idea of any dimensional boundaries, yet offer me little else except metaphors. Case 23 says the spirit world itself is a source of creation. Some have called this place the heart or breath of God. Case 22 defined the space of souls as, quote, fabric, unquote, and I have had other subjects give the spirit world a quality of, quote, the folds of a seamless dress swishing back and forth, unquote. They sometimes feel the effects of a gently, quote, rippling, unquote, motion from light energy, which has been described as waves or rings rolling outward from the disturbed pool of water. Normally, the geography of soul spaces has a smooth and open consistency to people in superconsciousness without displaying the properties of gravity, temperature, pressure, matter, or a time clock associated with chaotic physical universe. However, when I attempt to characterize the entire spirit world as a void, people in trance resist this notion. Although my cases are unable to fully explain the place where their souls live, they are all outspoken about this ultimate reality for them. And a subject in trance doesn't see the spirit world as being either near or far from our physical universe. Nevertheless, in a curious way, they do portray spiritual substance as being light or heavy, thick or thin, and large or small when comparing their experiences as soul to life on earth. While the absolute reality of the spirit world appears to remain constant in the minds of people in hypnosis, their references to other physical dimensions do not. I have the sense that universes other than our own are created for the purpose of providing environments suitable for the growth of souls with beings we can't even imagine. One advanced subject told me that he had lived on a number of worlds in his long existence, never dividing his soul more than twice at one time. Some adult lives lasted only months in Earth time for him due to local planetary conditions and short lifespans of the dominant life form. While speaking of a paradise planet with few people and quieter, simpler versions of Earth, he added this world was not far from Earth. Quote, "Oh," I interrupted. Then, and continuing, "then it must be only a few light years from Earth," unquote. He patiently explained that the planet was not in our universe, but closer to our Earth than many planets in our own galaxy. It is important for the reader to understand that when people do recall living on other worlds, they seem not to be limited in the dimensional constraints of our universe. When souls travel to planets intergalactically or interdimensionally, they measure the trip by the time it takes them to reach their designations through the tunnel effect from the spirit world. The size of the spatial region involved and relative positions of worlds to each other are also considerations. After listening to references about multiple dimensional realities from some of my subjects, I am left with the impression they believe there is a confluence of all the dimensional streams into one great river of the spirit world. If I could stand back and take apart all of these alternate realities seated in the minds of my cases, it would be like peeling an artichoke of all of its layers down to the one heart of the core. I had been questioning Thies for quite a while, and I could see she was growing tired. Few subjects can sustain this level of spiritual receptivity for very long. I decided to end the session with a few questions about the genesis of all creation. Dr. N. Thies, I want to close by asking you more about the source. You have been the soul for a long time, so how do you see yourself relating to the oneness of creation you told me about earlier? Subject, long pause. By sensations of movement. In the beginning, there is an outward migration of our soul energy from the source. Afterwards, our lives are spent moving inward towards cohesion and uniting. Yeah, you see? Yet another example of the same, the same message here. Dr. N, you make this process seem as though a living organism was expanding and contracting. Subject, there is an explosive release, then a returning. Yes, the source pulsates. Dr. N, and this whole, yes, the source pulsates. Um, One of the things about reaching, how can I say this? Also, one of the effects about reaching very high spiritual states is that when you come out of those very deep meditation sessions, and you are just so, can I say this? It's so hard to explain this in language. When you are like charged with all this and just incredible energy, you open your eyes, you feel, you smell, you taste, but you see, at least I have seen this on so many occasions after deep meditations and connecting deeply into myself, to exactly what they're talking about here. I experienced this pulsation of life. I can feel it. I can see it. It's really an incredible feeling and an experience, and it lasts. It's like a high anyone has ever experienced with the most powerful drug in the entire world, with zero side effects except for excessive bliss. I mean, when I say excessive bliss, I really mean that, and it's life changing, and it's one of those things too. Um, Once you touch that, you're never going back. You'll never want to go back. All you're gonna want to do is go back. You're never gonna go back to regular life. You're all you're gonna want to do go back is to find that bliss again, and to sit in there and to learn something from it, and then live your life with that always kind of in the backdrop, because that really is something it's so helpful in dealing with the problems of life, is creating that blissful, peaceful, very calm sense in yourself at all times. It is something else. Continuing, Dr. N, and you are moving towards the center of this energy source. Subject, there really is no center. The source is all around us, as if we were just inside a beating heart. Just like I explained the Egyptian concept, okay? The globe with the dot in the middle. So that's exactly what that means. Dr. N, but did you say you were moving back to a point of origin as your soul advanced in knowledge? Subject, yes. When I was thrust outward, I was a child. Now I'm being drawn back as my adolescence fades. Dr. N, back where? Subject, further inside the source. Dr. N, perhaps you could describe this energy source through the use of colors to explain soul movement and the scope of creation. Subject sighs. It's as if souls are all part of a massive electrical explosion which produces a halo effect. And this circular halo is a dark purple light which flares out, lightning to a whiteness at the edges. Our awareness begins at the edges of brilliant light, and as we grow, we become more engulfed in the darker light. Isn't that fascinating? Dr. N, I find it hard to visualize a God of creation as cold, dark light. Subject, that's because I'm not close enough to conjunction to explain it well. The dark light is itself a covering beyond which we feel an intense warmth, full of knowing presence, which is everywhere for us and alive. Dr. N, what was it like when you first Dr. N, what was it like when you were first aware of your identity as a soul after being pushed out to the rim of this halo? Subject, to be This is the same as watching the first flower of spring open, and the flower is you, and it opens up more, and you become aware of other flowers in a glorious field, and there is unbounded joy. That's right. Dr. N, if this explosive multicolored energy source collapsed in and of itself, will all the flowers eventually die? Subject, nothing is collapsing. The source is endless. All souls will never die. We know that somehow. As we coalesce, our increasing wisdom makes the source stronger. Dr. N, is that the reason the source desires to perform this exercise? Subject, yes, to give life to us so we can arrive at a state of perfection. Dr. N, why does the source who is obstinately perfect already need to create further intelligence which is less than perfect? Subject, to help the creator create. In this way, by self-transformation and rising to higher plateaus of fulfillment, we add to the building blocks of life. Now, this is a major theme in the esoteric book from the 70s, A Course of Miracles. Course of Miracles is like a book that was supposedly dictated to this this woman who was a psychotherapist, this is a big theme of this book, is this whole idea of that we are all co-creators with God, and we just don't realize it because we're stuck in this wheel of reincarnation, or what would be called in East samsara. And so, fascinatingly enough, again, it's all these religions who are fighting for each other, and the reality is that the entire purpose of any spirituality is to rise up and connect ourselves with that wholeness. So, I mean, I really would like people to stop killing each other and being hateful to each other over ideas that they hardly have any concepts over in their own actual life. So I just, and it's things like this which gives us like some interesting clues. So I'm continuing. Dr. N, were souls forced to break away from the source and come to places like Earth because of some sort of original sin or fall from grace in the spiritual world? Subject, that's nonsense. We came to be magnified in the beautiful variety of creation. Dr. Thies, I want you to listen to me carefully. If the source needs to be made stronger or more wise by using a division of its divine energy to create lesser intelligence, which it hopes will magnify, doesn't this suggest it lacks full perfection itself? Good question. Subject, pause. The source creates for fulfillment of itself. Dr. N, and that is another huge, that statement is another big theme in the Course of Miracles as well. In the Course of Miracles, essentially, what their whole thing is that we are a portion, we are a soul, we are a spirit created by God itself, and we became distracted, which then created a division, which then created the entire universe. But within the rising up of our souls and our actually coalescing into this oneness of God, the universe will actually break down and eventually disappear because it was nothing more than a dream in the first place. And so, just to throw you guys out there, that is a more modern take on this idea. And that book came out years before this one ever came out. Continuing. Dr. N, that's my point. How can that which is absolute become more absolute unless something is lacking? Subject hesitates. That which we see to be our source is all we can know, and we think that the Creator desires is to express itself through us by birthing. Dr. N, and do you think the source is actually made stronger by our existence as souls? Subject, long pause. I see the Creator's perfection, maintained and enriched by sharing the possibilities of perfection with us, and this is the ultimate extension of itself. And so, again, another, just to clarify as well, it's like the idea that God is perfect. And one of the things and I think what this doctor is trying to get at here is this idea that we aren't perfect. We have this kind of weird whatever situation that we're dealing with or whatever else. But and there's another thing that the Course in Miracles talks about, is that the whole purpose of life is to realize that you actually are part of the perfection. And the realization of that part of the perfection is like a part of God that went that fell asleep on itself. Let's say God's Son fell asleep and has this dream of the universe that it's created on its own because of its distraction. And by bringing that distraction to its original source, which is why Jesus says you go back to the beginning and you have found the end. This is exactly what he means by that. 100%. That's exactly what he means by that. Continuing. So I see the Creator's perfection maintained and enriched by sharing the possibility of perfection with us, and this is the ultimate extension of itself. Dr. N. So the source starts out by deliberately creating imperfect souls and imperfect life forms on this for these souls, and watches what happens in order to extend itself. Subject. Yes, and we have to have faith in this decision and trust the process of returning to the origin of life. One has to be starving to appreciate food, to be cold to understand the blessings of warmth, and to be children to see the value of a parent. The transformation gives us purpose. Dr. N. Oh, and another thing that's interesting about this whole concept that they're talking about here and the Course of Miracles is this idea that the oversoul that we belong to is not the actual superior God, and that superior God exists outside of any of this illusion and exists independently, but we are tethered to that. And so this whole idea that we are all part of the Elohim, or we are all part of a godlike spirit, is essentially the theme that they're kind of talking about back and forth. Because again, this was written many years ago, and I read it many years ago, but I've gotten a lot more insight in this book as I've done so much more research and had a lot more experience as the years rolled on. So just wanted to share that. Okay, but that's a good point, how do we know what we're not unless we realize how to appreciate certain things, right? Dr. N, do you want to be a parent of souls? Subject, participation in the conception of ourselves is a dream of mine. Dr. N, if our spirits did not experience physical life, would we ever know of these things you are telling me about? Subject, we would know of them, but not about them. It would be as if your spiritual energy were told to play piano scales with only one note. Dr. N, and you do believe if the source didn't create souls to nurture and grow, its sublime energy would shrink from lack of expression? Subject sighs, perhaps that is its purpose. So, and another point here is that he's asking questions that are higher than these people can answer, and he definitely says that in multiple places here. So this book is important. It's got really amazing insights in it, but some of the more higher degree of understanding is something that I don't think he's ever going to be able to break through, and I don't think he ever does, to tell you the truth. I mean, I own both books, physical books here at my own place, and the second one has got all kinds of great information in it as well, but it doesn't, it's interesting. It's because that final step is something like, and he says this in multiple parts in this book. It's very obscure. There's nobody really knows what happens, but everyone knows that that's the direction everyone wants to be. So, we'll go with that. Let's see here. So to finish this chapter, with this latest prophetic statement by Thais, I ended this session. As I brought this subject out of her deep trance, it was as though she were returning to me from across time and space, and she sat quietly focusing her eyes around my office. I expressed my appreciation for the opportunity of working with her on such an advanced level, smiling the lady as if she had any idea of the grilling in store for her. She might well have refused to work with me. As we said goodbye, I thought about her last statements concerning the source of life. In ancient Persia, the Sufis had a saying that if the Creator represents an absolute good and therefore absolute beauty, it is the nature of beauty to desire manifestation. And that's another aspect of the way the Course in Miracles certainly expresses the same type of thing. And it's like the idea of that perfect, omnipresent, supreme being is in constant creation. But what it's creating is the thing that's obscure. It's not, our small physical minds and what we think what we think we know, and in this very limited life that we have. It's extremely difficult to be able to conceptualize these kinds of things, and that's why, again, you have things like Buddhism and Jainism and things like that. They just kind of they push it off to the side. They realize the futility of this, because then what happens is the argument becomes, is God real? Is God not real? And then you have the ad nauseum argumentation and all that kind of stuff that just goes on, and it keeps going on. And it's just, what do we, how do we, it's like that whole idea of insanity. You keep trying the same thing, expecting different results. Well, I mean, we all do this. We do this all the time, and it's very simple. If many of us just stood back or stepped back and just paid attention, you know, um, just be more observant in life and how people act, how people, do things. Be a silent observer. You don't necessarily have to be somebody who's constantly, engaging or whatever else. But I've learned so many life lessons that I didn't have to go through myself, because my friends went through them right in front of me, and I was able to learn these kinds of things. But this book is is great. It gives us an opportunity to do so many, to look at life in so many different ways. To maybe stop arguing about things that don't necessarily matter so much, and maybe get back to doing things like living a good life, and maybe realizing what a purpose of our life actually really is. Because the thing is, what's fascinating about all this is that, as above, so below, right? These spiritual entities, these souls, are working out the same darn problems that you and I are sitting here struggling with every single day. So, you know, let's take life seriously, but not too seriously. Let's do something like make choices that actually help to progress us forward. But really, let's also try to spend time doing what's going to bring us closer to that mental state. So learn how to meditate, learn how to pray. If you guys want help in maybe some methods and stuff like that, please message me or send a comment, something like that, and I'll see what I can whip up as far as different types of videos that I can do for you guys. I'm definitely planning on doing things like this associated with the whole Shiva stuff that I'll be sharing with you guys soon, because I think it's 112 ways of meditation. Shiva's meditations are simple, and they're easy, and they don't include theology and a bunch of other preconceived notions for you to actually practice it and enjoy it. So, you know, let's I'll leave that up to you guys as far as, because it's all obviously your choice on how you guys want to do it. But I will tell you that you will, stick with it, and because again, this is something I've been doing for 15, 20 years. I'll never stop, because why would I? It gives me so much benefit and so much knowledge and so much understanding, peace, love, all these things. So, uh, either way, that's it for me for now. I may come back in a half an hour, but probably not. So yeah, I'll probably be back tomorrow morning, and God willing, I'll be able to finish the book. If not, I'll do one more part, and we'll finish that. But otherwise, if you guys really liked, listening to this audiobook, please hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't, share if you think other people would really appreciate this kind of information. But realize a lot of people they're gonna balk at this right away, and and if they do, don't worry about it. It's okay. Maybe they're not ready for it, and that's part of the maturity, I think, in understanding deeper spiritual let's see, realizations, is that one doesn't that you don't get offended when people don't respond to you in the way you want them to, because it's part of releasing your attachment to those kinds of things. Because at least I realize, one would realize the deeper you go, that people will be ready when they're ready. The only thing you have to do is work on yourself, because the more you work on yourself, the more people really truly realize there's a possibility of change. And in my own personal family, my siblings have told me that they are amazed at how different I am today than when I was in younger, times in my life. And I'm talking a complete change, one type of person to the other, and that's not a mistake. And but it's something that's why I did this channel. It's why I started this channel. It's why I wanted to share these things with people because I love you guys, and I think that again, if I'm able to reach and help somebody break out of their pattern of destructive behavior because they are just in a chaotic type of mindset, and to really bring them back into something that will help them live such a better life and to have perspective and real joy and real happiness, not this fake materialistic happiness of, oh, let me have this and let me have that kind of thing. No, this is something that you carry with you at all times of the day, and it is incredible. I mean, you know, I can't explain it. The only thing I can tell you is that every single day I wake up with this feeling. I go to sleep with this feeling. And the more that I spend and the more that I learn and the more that I progress, it just gets more intense. And the bliss is really, that's the goal. Because once you've hit that bliss through meditation, then so many of these aspects of what we're talking about in this book come and flow naturally. And that's when you start to realize how things are changing in your own life, is that little tiny things will present themselves, and they'll be tiny to other people, but they'll be like a lightning bolt to you. And in times like this happened to me many times in my life, there will be times of recognition or of a realization of something, and it's like that kundalini energy just goes right through your body like a zappa energy. Which, by the way, which is why you have lightning bolts in mythology. That means knowledge. It means the downloading, or of divine knowledge. This is why Zeus always has it in his hand. You know what I mean? And so, be receptive to those things. Practice meditation in your life as much as you can, and it doesn't matter what religion you come from. Doesn't matter. If you put too much emphasis on that, or you put too much emphasis on the whole idea of God and who's right and who's wrong in the scriptures, you're going to lose yourself. And that's the biggest problem with religions. And one of the things is that once you reach a certain point, you realize every one of these gods is the same thing. It's the same source. So as a person, if you're ready to take that step forward, you as a person can then conceptually not ever hate someone else's religion or opinion about God, because you realize that's just their viewpoint of it, and that their little dimension and the way that they see that is their special thing, and that is important. You cannot you can poo-poo it if you want to, but what's the point, right? It's having that respect that they understand that there is a connection in their own way, and that even though they may distort it in one way or the other, they're still on their path, and just like you are on your path. And so we as a people can create mutual respect with each other to create a much better world and a much better existence here if we do our own self work. You can't rely on someone else to do this for you. This is you. This is up to you. Your dimension of your life that you're living is your responsibility. And it might seem to be a heavy burden, but realistically, it's not a heavy burden. It's something that is an incredible gift in a lot of ways, to have to deal with the tribulations of life. Because once you deal with it, there's nothing more satisfying than being able to conquer, let's just say, or overcome these aspects of life, which really are really hard to do. And that a lot of that has to do with death and grief and betrayal and all these things. But there are perspectives, and we can make this happen. So I just want to say thank you guys for listening, and I appreciate all the messages and everything that you guys send me. Much love to all of you, and I will probably see you tomorrow morning, Eastern Standard Time, probably between 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning. So for all of you that will come tomorrow and listen, great. For any of you guys picking this up later on, because this is YouTube, we'll catch you in the next video. Okay? And peace.